You ready to do this, Matt?
Yes, sir. Punch it, Chewie.
Welcome, super friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot is Matt Shaw. We're two nerds that just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 161. We release every Thursday morning. You can find us on the website, fortofnerd.com. We got links, iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, basically anywhere you can get a podcast, you can get us there. Stop by, relax a while. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and you can get us every week automatically in your ear holes. How about that? Matt, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I know this isn't the Christmas episode. I know that we recorded that one and it has come out, and this one's going to come out like the day after Christmas, but we're recording on Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas again.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Yes.
I don't think we can ever have enough Christmas joy in our lives.
Never.
Until at least we hit January 1, then it's like,
then
move
it's just
on.
sad to talk about Christmas.
Yeah. Get them lights down off the house, put away the decorations. It's time to move on. We got Martin Luther King Day, and we got Valentine's Day, which I don't celebrate. Then we got my birthday and Emmy's birthday.
Yep.
And then we're just off to the races, and then it's, Memorial Day and 4th of July and Labor Day, and then it's...
Oh, man, you're already
Halloween.
back.
We're back to Thanksgiving, and boom, Christmas again.
I like that.
How was your week?
It was a good week.
Yeah?
Good week. Yep, family in town, just spending some time hanging out, playing games at night, Christmas cookies, movies, hot chocolate. The whole shebang. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
I haven't watched a single Christmas movie this season yet.
This is sad to me.
This is usually not the case, but
there are lots of other things.
I did that. Yeah, I did the whole Star Wars marathon and finished Rebels, and there's just been a lot going on. So yeah. So tomorrow night, which will be for us Christmas Eve, from when we record this, we'll watch the Charlie Brown Christmas special and get that classic Christmas experience.
Yes. Well, I've watched a lot of Christmas movies. I start early, though. Halloween is over. It's time for Home Alone. And...
wow, that is early.
It's got to be. I make a list every year of all the Christmas movies I want to watch in an ideal world. And there's way too many for me to be able to say, okay, like when December starts, I'm going to start watching Christmas movies. It's just not possible.
But are you watching like the Hallmark cheesy stuff?
Maybe a few, maybe 3 at most. This year, it's been almost none of that. There's just been so many other things.
So give me like a rundown, like what's like in like your yearly rotation, like things that you always hit.
The Home Alones are probably my number
one
one
and two
priority.
Only?
Oh, yeah, I'm not hitting
you're not hitting
4
3.
plus whatever else there is. Yeah, Home Alone 1, Home Alone 2. Those are the must-watches, along with Christmas Vacation. Yep. If I only had to watch those 3, I would be okay. I wouldn't be, like, stoked. But I know I'm going to get criticized for this, all y'all haters out there, but Jim Carrey's The Grinch. I'm a huge fan. It's super funny. I'm into it. But we didn't watch that this year. We watched the animated one that came out last year with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Which my boys call that the Grinch 2.
Oh, well.
Because there's the original animated Grinch, and then this one's Grinch 2.
That's great. Okay, so I watched the Grinch 2, which is great. And then there's some of the classics at my house, like Muppet Christmas Carol, A Christmas Story.
Yep.
One of my favorite movies is The Family Stone. I don't know if any of y'all have seen that.
I watch that fairly regularly.
Oh, I love that movie. So funny. Oh,
it's not exactly though like an uplifting like it's kind of a sad Christmas movie.
It is. It's emotional at the end.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm crying, and I don't know that I got myself into this until just now.
Yep.
It gets heavy, but I really like it.
What about the Family Man with Nicolas Cage?
I avoid Nicolas Cage. The Family Man is a good movie. However, it is maybe his best movie. Up for debate. Depends on if you're watching it for the memes or if you're watching it for real. And I'm sure I'm missing some. I check them off as I go, but those are kind of the quintessential.
Do you go in for like the stuff like Breda's family loves, like White Christmas?
Okay.
Like those considered classics?
White Christmas, Jesse and I were dating around Christmas time. We'd been dating for probably a month and a half or 2 months by the time Christmas came around. And I'd never seen I wasn't raised on those old movies. The oldest movie I was raised on is A Christmas Story.
Gotcha.
And White Christmas is awful. I hate that movie. I'm sorry. I know it's a classic to everybody out there that's listening. I hate that movie. However, the classic movie that I watched the first year that I was part of the Gifford family and we all went up for Christmas that year, It's a Wonderful Life. I actually really like It's a Wonderful Life.
That's classic.
That is really a great movie. However, the other stuff, not interested.
So your list is pretty much my list, although I don't watch the Jim Carrey Grinch. Do watch It's a Wonderful Life usually. You did miss the greatest Christmas movie of all time in there. You've got some of the good ones, but you missed the greatest Christmas movie of all time in your
Christmas
list.
Vacation. That's the greatest Christmas movie.
That is second.
Okay, what am I missing?
The greatest Christmas movie of all time. And the super friends who have been here, ride or die from day one.
Die Hard.
They know
I
it.
already know now.
Die Hard. Die Hard.
Yeah. You know
that
what?
Is
Our
the greatest
mother-in-law
Christmas
said,
movie.
Matt, next year for Christmas, you don't have to get me anything. You just have to watch the Die Hards, because I've never seen any Die Hard.
Watch the first one.
Okay.
Everything else is entirely up to you. The only reason she says that is because I turned her on to Die Hard being a Christmas movie.
Yep. Oh, I know. I heard about it all when she was here when Lando was born. And I was like, look, Chris, it's now a thing. And the fact that you want me to watch them that badly makes me want to not watch them to tease you.
So
teasing Chris is, as you know, one of our favorite pastimes.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so much fun. And she gets a kick out of it too. We don't do it to be mean. We do it because it's fun. We got a good relationship. It's great. I love it. Teasing her is great.
In all fairness, like the whole series, the second one's actually filmed around Christmas time too, truth be told. But it's not as good as the first one. It's still good. It's just not as good as the first one. And then in my opinion, then it just kind of becomes the formulaic action movie as you move further down the series. The first one, don't see it for her, but see it for me. It's totally worth it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Totally worth it.
Eventually, I might get around to it.
Yep.
We'll see. But that was...
I'll make it... You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make it a movie club.
Oh,
that'll
do it. Golly.
Honestly, it's I think it's my favorite Christmas movie.
Okay.
Because it's got everything. It's got the Christmas stuff in it. It's got action. It's Bruce Willis. It's Hans freaking Gruber, baby. I mean...
Money. But that was pretty much my week. Just kind of the regular Christmas stuff, like drive around and look at lights. And we had lots of plans, and some of them pan out, and most of them don't, as I'm sure all of you listening can understand.
Especially with kids.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, ooh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And then you're like, maybe
not. I'm tired, and I don't want to.
We have a Christmas light display just not too far from us that's a drive-through. And you just drive through it, and it's free. The city of Layton puts it up. But as you get closer to Christmas, the lines for that thing, like you look at it and you're like, that's easily going to be an hour to drive through. Right. When you're going like 10 miles an hour, tops 5 miles an hour, it literally takes you maybe 2 minutes to get through it. It's like, that's like standing in line at Disneyland for like an hour and a half for a 2-minute ride.
Yeah.
You do it because you've already paid to be at Disneyland, but when you're doing it for free and it's right around the corner, I'm like, no. So typically what we do is we go and hit that up early in the season, like right after Thanksgiving when it fires up, when no one's there. We'll drive through that and just loop it. And like we'll drive through it for like 45 minutes nonstop
right.
and let the kids look at it. This year we talked about parking over there and like walking around and going and looking at the lights, but we forgot to do that. But we have driven around and looked at a lot of lights from the car, which is kind of fun to do.
Yeah. There are a lot of places where you can drive through, probably all around the country, but they're freaking like $30 a car. And I'm like, man, my daughter doesn't care if it's all special or not. She freaks out when she sees candy canes lighting the way to someone's door.
Right, exactly.
I don't got to pay $30 for her to be stoked.
Yeah, like we put a couple of those in our house, we ain't have to leave at all.
No, man, that girl, she don't care. Jeez.
Yep.
But
yeah, my week's kind of the same as yours. Like, looking at Christmas lights, plans, like we were supposed to do a whole bunch of stuff with the kids this Christmas season. Just like you run out of time and things happen and you just can't do it all.
Yep.
One of the things we like to do is go down to Temple Square in Salt Lake and see all the lights because it's really pretty. And
is it
there's
open?
going to be so it's still open.
Okay.
But I think a couple days after Christmas is when they're going to start doing a lot of construction. And they're going to be doing construction in the Temple Square area for like the next 4 years. So like the light display is going to be dramatically downsized for the next 4 years. So realistically, we only have a few more days to go see it with our kids, or we're not going to get to see it for like in its full glory for like 4 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
We thought about it. We were going to do it. It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it is what it is. You have to make priorities, and I get that. Let's see, what else this week? So I did finish my Star Wars marathon. I did finish Star Wars Rebels. I did watch The Mandalorian, which released on an early day this last week.
Yep.
And then I've started watching the Witcher series that also dropped on Friday the 20th. I've seen the first episode. I really like it. It feels adjacent to the game because I know this is based off of the books, which I have and I haven't read yet. But it's characters and some names that I'm recognizing from my playthrough of the game so far. And so I think it's going to be really good. I'm looking forward to getting back to it. I also started the Clone Wars with Brita, and we're watching in chronological order. So like we had to watch 2 episodes or an episode from like the 3rd season, then an episode from like late in the 1st season, then the theatrical release, then we jump and like watch like 2 from the 2nd season, then we pretty much watched most of the 1st season in order. But like because of the way they filmed it and they jumped around in some time stuff, like this is the official from StarWars.com, the canon way to watch it in chronological order. So we're watching that on Disney Plus.
Nice.
Other than that, man, it's just it's been a week. It's been getting prepped for Christmas. That's always just a busy week.
It is. And there's a million things that we did that we didn't remember because our brains are fried.
Yes, exactly. Oh, speaking of which, my brain being fried, our brother-in-law, Eric, and his wife, Karen, they had their 4th child, a boy. So they got their 2nd son. I'm not on the whole like Gifford family text messaging because by choice I definitely asked to be removed from it because I think that people forget that people work and have jobs and can't have their phones buzzing like crazy in conference meetings. So I kind of heard about it secondhand. He was born a day or 2 ago. He's got a name. I don't know. He's a boy. He's new in the family. I'm an uncle. Like that's all I need to know. Like show me where to send him some money to get him some cool stuff, and we're on and popping.
Well said. I am on that group chain, and I would honestly say probably 120 text messages in the last 2 or 3 days. So
and I didn't get a single one of those, and you know how I feel,
all, man. You just feel so left out. I know it.
Yeah. I cry myself to sleep every night.
Yeah, he does, guys. He's crying.
I just ask Brita every now and again. She'll say, "Oh, this and this happened." I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, that's right." And I say, "Okay, what have I missed in the last 3 or 4 months?" And then she'll like talk to me for like 10 minutes, and I just kind of nod, and then I'm like, "Oh, okay, wait, hold on. I'm interested about that. Tell me more about that."
Yeah.
Some of the other stuff, I'm like, "Oh, your mom made cookies in prep for Christmas. Doesn't she always do that? Like, why are we taking time? Like, tell me about the kid. Like, let's get to the let's get to the good stuff." Not that we don't like Christmas cookies and whatnot, but I got limited space in this brain. All right, Matt, it's probably time.
Yep.
There's a thing we do every week. But this being the week of Christmas or Christmas adjacent, because this will come after the day after, I think I may have asked you this last week, but I'm going to ask you again. Is there a festive way you'd like to kill Bothans this week?
Yeah, we're going to do it like Baby Yoda. We're going to force choke these freaking guys.
All right. Not exactly festive, but, it works.
It's timely, all right? It's
timely.
current.
There you go. Timely, yes. I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
All right, Matt, we're into Rebel Intelligence. We are amongst Bothans littered on the floor that have all been force-choked to death. What do you have for me this week?
All right. Speaking of being force-choked to death, you wouldn't get me to go to this movie if you force-choked me to death. It's Cats.
Oh,
let's talk about Cats. Okay, interesting fact, not part of this. It is number 19 in worst box office openings in the history of movies. So,
what's
Universal
number one?
Pictures or I don't even know. You don't know any of them until you
gotcha.
like once you get to the top 10, you're like, no wonder these did so poorly. I don't know what the heck these are. But they're like decent budget movies. Like they had to have a certain threshold. Regardless, this movie had like $95 million budget and it made like 7?
Yikes.
It's rough, y'all. We all knew this was going to be rough, but here's the good news. It's getting like a re-release with finished and improved visual effects.
Yeah.
So the movie's been out like not even a week. And they're like, wait, everybody
Here's a patch.
Come back. It's going to be so much better. We've got new effects.
Did you really just say meow? We've got new effects, Matt. That's awesome.
I imagine that's what they said. Yo, y'all, this movie wasn't even finished. Like some of the reviews there's like parts where the visual effects literally aren't done. Like they're not completed. Like they just kind of put a Band-Aid on it and assumed no one would notice because of how bad the movie is. There's a lot of people probably didn't notice or they were sleeping. However, lots of these visual effects were not finished, so they're improving the finished product and they're potentially changing some of the designness of it, but this is beyond fixing. Yeah. So if you saw Cats, and I know you did, and you want to go back again, this is a great opportunity and an excuse to go
Cats
back.
2.0?
Oh, yes. Oh, I can't wait. I hope they have the theatrical version and the re-release version on the Blu-ray. I can't wait.
So what's interesting about this is like, usually this is common in video games, right? So like a video game will come out and like they set a hard deadline. They've got to ship it, but they know it's not completely done. So they ship the gold copy so it can be printed. And then day one, there's like a 20 gig or a 40 gig day one patch, and you have to download that to play the game, and then you get the completed game. Unfortunately, it's a thing. I don't really care for it, but unfortunately, it's a thing. You know, corporate pressure, get it out. Usually, though, if a movie's not done, they just bump the movie back on the schedule.
Yeah.
They just release it at a different time. So my question is this. Why were they so dead set on getting it released on December 20th before the end of the year, knowing that they still had visual effects and stuff that was not done and the movie was not complete?
They wanted to go against Star Wars so bad. Like so bad. That they were willing to sacrifice. There's no reason. I don't get it.
I mean, that makes no sense to me.
Oh my gosh.
No sense.
What a disaster. Well, at least we can... I don't know. I don't want to laugh because it just feels so bad. There's some actors and actresses and artists in this movie, and I just go, why did y'all do this? I don't get it. Like,
well, I can tell you why they did it. It's a paycheck.
That's a $95 million budget. It was a big budget movie. They probably got a decent cut out of that.
Yeah, and also sometimes you look at this and you say, well, they may not have got a huge paycheck, but they may have said, like, we'll give you points on the back end. So if it becomes big, you know, I mean, I know there was actors that did
that.
Right, Robert Downey did that. There was actors from Lord of the Rings that did that as well.
Yeah, smart.
And so they, you know, I mean, gosh, Peter Jackson, you know, who directed those, he took points on the back end and made a lot of money. So like, I know that's a thing. Boy, here's the thing. I look at it. I feel bad for the actors and actresses. I feel bad for the directors. I feel bad for all the crew, all the, you know, all the people that worked on the production, wanting it to be good. But at some point, at some level, you have to go to the studio execs and the producers that came up with this idea and said, let's take a musical that's been off Broadway for 20-ish years, maybe, and let's let's take it and let's adapt it into a film and it'll be great. Oh, by the way, we'll also put it up against probably the biggest release this year, or one of the biggest releases this year. Like that just...
It's nonsense. It's awful, and someone should lose their job. Because
a few people probably.
This is so bad, inexcusable, like some great names in this movie. I can't believe what we've all witnessed.
Yeah.
And not that many witnessed it on the screen, obviously, because it didn't make much.
And so here's the thing too, Matt. Well, I mean, we're talking about this because we're talking about it's bad and the visual effects are bad. Because they put out a trailer a while back and the visual effects were really bad in that. And they went like, why do these cats look way too humanized and they're kind of sexualized and like...
Really weird.
So they already went in and made some changes already. Now they're doing it again. If this had been done, if this had been a complete product and all the visual effects were where they needed to be, I think it wouldn't be getting the bad press for these issues, but still they put it up against Rise of Skywalker. So assuming that everything was great and assuming that the movie was even a good movie, period, putting it up against Rise of Skywalker, you're not going to have the opening weekend you're going to want. You're not going to make the kind of money you need. Why not delay it a week or two when nothing else is going to be really opening up against it? And people have already seen Rise of Skywalker a few times.
Right.
And so they're like, let's go see something new. Then maybe they'd go see Cats. You might have a bigger opening weekend. I'm not a guy in this industry, but that makes sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, there had to be a reason. There had to be a reason.
Something, right?
It's bad. Cats is bad. I don't know what they were thinking by making this movie at all. Doesn't matter when it comes out. Doesn't matter what special effects they had. I'm out.
Yeah.
So anyway, what do you got for us?
It's not Cats related. Thank goodness.
Oh, hallelujah.
But it is something that is older that's being brought back. This is something I'm actually really excited for. This is the Bill and Ted Face the Music, Bill and Ted 3. So we got a greater look this week, kind of about like what the story's going to be like. Basically, it's, you go back to the original. These two bumbling idiots were told that their garage band that they were trying to work on eventually is going to, save the universe, create a utopia. And, they're working towards that goal. But like, here it is a few decades later and they're still working towards that goal. And then apparently something happens and they're told like, hey, whatever you're going to do, you have to do it right now in order to save the universe. We got to look at the kids. So we got a daughter from each of Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore Logan. The princesses from the second movie are going to be back. Death is going to be back again. Obviously, we know we're not getting Rufus because George Carlin is dead. R.I.P. But this film just looks, to me, from the stills I'm seeing and from the things I'm hearing, it's going to continue on with the wacky craziness. It's just supposed to be tongue-in-cheek. It's just supposed to be fun popcorn movie. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any real like, hey, we need to retcon a ton of this stuff. We need to, fit this into existing storylines and a deep, rich history. It's just, hey, the first movie and the second movie were just goofy, fun movies.
Yep.
We're doing another one. We're gonna cash in on some nostalgia, and we're gonna make a movie. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's gonna be fine.
Yep.
Your expectations should be it's gonna be fine. I mean,
I'll put it to you this way: it'll make more money than Cats.
Oh man, it will make more money than Cats. I can almost guarantee it. It looks good. I mean, They look old. I'm not going to pretend they don't. Like, they look old. Keanu Reeves with that long hair, like really long hair.
Well, he doesn't have the beard. So I'm really used to seeing him lately having the beard and everything, which he still looks younger with the beard. Without the beard, he does look a little older.
Looks old.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
I mean, he's got to be what? Easily 50-ish? 55-ish now?
Let's find out. Keanu Reeves.
You find out how old Keanu is, 55. But I'm going to say 50. 55, hey, what'd I say?
He's a beautiful 55-year-old man.
Yep. So I don't know. We're going to get this August of 2020.
I think it'll do just fine.
Yeah.
I think it'll do just fine. I think people will enjoy it. Why wouldn't they?
I think that'll be a fun movie club. Just a fun laugh movie.
Yeah, totally.
No expectations.
Totally. It'll be great.
By the way, wild stallions rule. Just saying.
Oh boy. All right, well, I got something.
Yeah, hit me.
And this is this is great. So the official USDA website, that is the U.S. Department of Agriculture, went live and listed Wakanda. Yes, you heard that correctly.
Wakanda forever.
As a trade partner on its agricultural tariff tracker, which allows people to look up the various tariffs on everything from milk to dog food.
Nice.
So there's real countries, Guatemala and Peru. and then there's Wakanda. Do they know something we don't? Did they really find Wakanda? I mean, what's happening here?
I saw this story too, and I laughed, and I was like, okay, I've got to read this and find out more. So apparently, this is fairly common when software developers are working on something.
Right.
They will put in phony, bogus stuff to test in like a test environment. And apparently when they pushed it to production and went live with it, they forgot to pull out the bogus, phony Wakanda that they were using for testing. Now, I find that really funny.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Everybody knew it wasn't real. Everybody knows it's funny. Like, these things happen no matter how high level your company is, like how high up you are, how many eyes you put on it. Sometimes you just read past it and you just don't notice. Especially, I can see this being easy because Wakanda, you're like, I don't know a lot about Africa. So, and I've heard this name before. I just don't know where. So I'm going to assume that that's real. And then you just kind of keep going.
Gosh, what would make this story even funnier for me would be if, and I don't get very political here. I mean, I try to keep this neutral, but what would be really funny is like if they were delisted and taken off, and then the next thing you know, there's a tweet in the middle of the night, and I'm going to do the voices like, we took Wakanda off the list. They weren't a good trade partner, so we're no longer going to trade with them. We don't want any of their stuff. We're going to renegotiate and get a better deal with Wakanda. Like, because you know that there's literally things that have come across his desk that he's seen or heard and doesn't have enough information about, and then is tweeted about, and later you're like, maybe you kind of got that meme a little bit wrong. I mean, you're trying to, like, talk about how, I don't know. Right. He did this thing recently with the Avengers, and I kind of went like, oh, he's tweeting something with the Avengers. He's making a comparison to him being Thanos, who kills half of the population of the entire universe. Oh, maybe that's not the best comparison you should be making. Things like that happen sometimes. And I get that, like, politicians have a habit of trying to, like, latch on to ideas, the things that are hot in pop culture sometimes. And it doesn't exactly work right. I'm trying to think. There was someone that latched on to, like one of, I was going to say Bob Dylan, but it wasn't Bob Dylan. One of Bruce Springsteen's songs, and he was like trying to make it like, oh, hardworking Americans. And basically he was like, yeah, my song's not about that. It's about the other thing. And I support the other guy, and don't use my music. But the guy was literally like, I can't remember who the politician was right now, but it literally was just like, this fit kind of like the narrative we're trying to push, and it's pop culture-y, so we're trying to use it. So part of me really wished that we would have got a middle of the night President Trump tweet about how Wakanda's been delisted from the USDA list. That would have been comedy gold for us. Didn't happen.
Yeah,
but.
We don't get political. We don't. Never mind. We don't get political as I'm about to say something political.
Unless it happens in pop culture and it's really funny. Then occasionally we mention it.
But when you compare, I'm not saying who's a better president. I'm not saying anything political. You compare Barack Obama and his kind of personality and current culture with Donald Trump, it's like...
Well, here's the thing. I think President Obama you're referring to, I think he was a little hipper to what's going on in pop culture. I mean,
definitely.
He knew all about Lin-Manuel Miranda and Hamilton, and so like
he actually watched the stuff.
Right. So like that, plus I think he also had a lot of younger staffers working for him.
Yeah.
They were a little more up on some of the things. I think President Trump has some younger staffers that work on things, but I think there's probably a little bit of an age gap that they're young, but they're not young enough. And so sometimes they pick up on stuff and it's like,
that's run its course.
Try again. You were close.
Wrong.
You were so close. We understand what you're
stale.
going for, however.
Yeah. Anyway, Wakanda.
All right.
Look
Wakanda
for it.
forever.
USDA. Let's get them back on the list. Come on, Donnie. Help us out.
I just want to apologize to T'Challa that he's no longer able to to trade vibranium with us at a fair rate.
Oh my gosh.
See, this is where we take over with the nerd and pop culture side of things.
Oh man, so good. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So here's what I got for you. A little while ago, Netflix came out with a She-Ra show. And I always kind of went like, She-Ra? Why She-Ra first? Like, HeMan was like the big property. She-Ra was kind of the spinoff.
Yep.
But the She-Ra show, which I'll admit, have not been watching, has been doing really good numbers for Netflix. It's been well received. So we heard a little while ago that there was going to be a He-Man, which I'm kind of excited for just because He-Man was so huge in my childhood. But it was going to be a limited series, and that's all we got. It was going to be a 2D animated limited series, a few episodes that are supposed to be a continuation of the original story. I can't tell you any of the original story stuff. All I know is Adam, Prince of Eternia, raises his sword, says, I have the power, and becomes He-Man.
Yeah.
And he's from, Castle Grayskull, and there's Skeletor's the evil guy. That's about all I remember from my childhood with He-Man. But just released this week, we're actually going to get a reboot of a sorts. We're going to get a brand new He-Man Masters of the Universe show. It's not going to be a continuation of this like limited edition run, which is supposed to be a story continuation of the original series, but a full reboot. It's going to be 3D animated. There's a lot of people that are going to be attached to it. Looks like they're going to put some money behind it, but it's just going to be a reimagining of the series. It's going to follow young Prince Adam as he discovers the power of Castle Grayskull, forges a team, and has to battle the forces of Skeletor. So basically it's going to be what I watched in my childhood, but 3D animated on Netflix. I'm excited for this, and I kind of want to get my boys into it, because if they will get into it and watch it, I'll watch it. I'll probably watch it a little bit more in passing that way. And, it'd be kind of nice to go back to my roots of my childhood a little bit every now and again.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm interested that it's 3D animated. That's different. That was before my time. Couldn't give a hoot about He-Man. But I know the basics of it still.
Right.
It's a cultural touchstone. I mean, if you're a cartoon lover as a kid, I mean, you at least heard of He-Man.
Right.
And knew the basics and Grayskull and by the power. And so there's certainly things that I appreciate about it. I don't think I'll watch it.
See, Matt, I grew up at a time when toy companies would come up with a line of toys and then want to figure out how to sell them. So then they would put together a cheap, poorly made cartoon series to sell those toys. I'm talking about G.I. Joe, He-Man, Transformers, GoBots, Voltron, like all these things. Yeah. They were just like, well, and to be perfectly honest, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is the exact same thing. They had a comic book, they sold the rights, so they wanted to make some turtle toys and sell them. And they're like, how do we get this out to the kids and the masses? Cartoon show.
Yeah, but
Cartoon
that's
show
a great
sells
TV
the toys.
show, okay?
Well, I mean, for its time.
It's great. And so is, what is it, like The Real Adventures of the Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
That cartoon, it's great. Nobody desecrates it. I had the toys. No one messes with it. But yeah, I get it. So I think it'll be great. Netflix always has been diving into the nostalgia quite a bit.
Yeah, they sure have.
They're really trying to, I don't know if that well's going to run dry. I don't know.
You think that eventually it would, but I mean, we're watching Stranger Things, and Stranger Things is a huge, huge thing. But let me ask you this. If it wasn't set in the 80s, and all the nostalgia around it, and if it was set in modern times,
right?
Do you think that show would be nearly as big as it is?
I don't know. It takes you out of where you are and puts you somewhere new, which I think we all want.
And that's why I think we're still going to see a lot of these nostalgia reboots. I mean, give me a good Thundercats.
Okay.
I mean,
that's more interesting than He-Man to me.
I mean, I loved He-Man as a kid. I did, but like Thundercats was big. Like, give me a new G.I. Joe. I would love to see a new G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
But anyway, and I digress. I could talk about cartoons that I wish would come back till I'm blue in the face.
Yep.
Do you have anything else, Matt?
No, I'm out.
I am out as well then. So, every week, we put out a question of the week. And we ask the Super Friends to answer that question of the week. Last week, Matt and I had our Christmas discussion, and we talked about numerous things that we picked best and worst of. And we talked about candy, we talked about Christmas specials, and we talked about decorations. And because this week was so crazy and so busy, I totally forgot to put out on social media the question of the week. So, we have a single response this week.
Peter doesn't even need a question.
Peter has got our back every week. So, we're going to go over to email, fortofnerd@gmail.com, Peter Christensen. And I'm going to have to jump around a little bit because there's a few things I can't talk about yet. So, Dear Nerds, I'd like to add one thing to your discussion of the various versions of the Star Wars that have been released. The Harmy's Despecialized Edition was created by a Czech school teacher who taught himself video editing in order to remove the new scenes and visual and sound effects added to existing scenes. This work included frame-by-frame color correction, rotoscoping, restoring Boba Fett's voice, removing the extra dewbacks, etc. After thousands of hours of work, they have what is viewed as the best possible recreation of the original Star Wars trilogy. It is also completely illegal and unpurchasable. Yes, Peter, you are correct. I did happen to get a copy of it. Just saying. And it is glorious. No McClunky, no McClunky. Han shoots first. What I love, Matt, this was like actually one of the most exciting things because I did start kind of rewatching those a little bit just to kind of see the differences. When the credits roll and then we get the opening crawl, it doesn't say Episode 4, A New Hope. It's just the crawl.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is the original way it came out in the theater. Because it wasn't called Episode 4 until we got to like 1980. All right, moving on. Peter's got a thing or two that I'm going to skip because it will give away other stuff. He says it was difficult to listen to the episode this last week because I'd already watched episode 7 of The Mandalorian, special Wednesday release. I will say no more about episode 7.
Okay.
Which we're okay now. We're past episode 7. We've released our Mandalorian. But it was funny because you and I had this thing where our sister-in-law started messaging us about episode 7 with some generic spoilers. And I try to avoid spoilers for stuff like that altogether. It's like when a Cubs game I've got recorded. And then I get a text message that says, oh man, did you see the Cubs game today? It was fantastic. And I'll say, hey man, I haven't seen it yet. Oh, don't worry, I'm not giving anything away, but you'll be really happy. I was like, well, now I know that the Cubs won. Well, I'm not saying that. Oh, so you're telling me now that they lost? Like, it's like, I unfortunately can read into people that try not to give you spoilers about something, but want to talk about it. It's like, you're too transparent. Just don't say anything.
Right.
So that happened. And then I was in the middle of watching, I don't know, I was switching between, Empire Strikes Back to go to Return of the Jedi, I think, at that point. And Peter starts messaging me directly. And he's like, have you watched it yet? And I was like, no, I'm doing this thing. I probably won't watch it. He's like, no, you need to watch this now. He's like, you need to watch this now. And I was like, okay. So I kind of paused the other things I was doing and fit it in for like 40 minutes. I gotta say, Matt, you and I did a really good job at predicting what we thought was going to be in episode 7.
Right?
We did a real good job. So anyway, episode 7's out. Now we got to wait almost another week, and we'll get episode 8, the finale. Okay. Peter goes on and says, here's how I scored your best/worst categories. Worst Christmas special. Not a fair category because only one of you could pick the Star Wars holiday special. Score void. Okay, maybe it's not fair, but I did pick that. I'm just saying. Anyway.
That's the low-hanging fruit.
It is. It totally is. But it's like,
but it is the worst.
But it is the worst.
I mean,
right?
it's awful.
Yeah. It says best Christmas special. Charlie Brown is an essential part of the baby boomer Christmas canon that we're all stuck with. But Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas is one of the most imaginative episodes of one of the most creative shows. Score, Matt.
I knew Peter would be on.
I agree with you as well. Related story. Every Christmas day in Sweden since 1959, they watch the Walt Disney Presents Christmas special From All of Us to All of You. 40 to 50% of the entire country watches it, and there's been loud and rapid outcry every time the TV station has tried to change or cancel it. They started showing it because people started buying TVs, but there was only one channel, so it was one of the few times that kids got to see cartoons, and now 3 generations in, it's as essential to Christmas as Santa. So in Sweden, at least, there's something more beloved than Abed and Charlie Brown combined.
Wow, cool.
That was really interesting. I like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Worst candy. I loved the sweet storybook because it had lots of flavors that I didn't always get. It was tradition, and no one has ever choked on a lifesaver because it has a hole.
Okay.
There's some scientific evidence there. How about that? Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really care for them now because I don't like hard candy, and they changed the book, so it doesn't open anymore. It's just a book cover printed on a box.
Oh, now it's even worse?
But candy canes suck. Score Spencer.
Yeah, candy canes do suck. Let's get real.
Best candy. I feel like the peanut butter in Reese's has gotten worse, but I love Reese's Pieces. I want to try the Reese's Tree, but since I haven't had one, I vote for the chocolate orange. Score Spencer.
Oh, man. At least it's not a clean sweep.
Worst decoration. The leg lamp is tacky, but I truly hate the ugly sweaters. My mom was a school teacher and very arts and crafts, so she wore an actual knit sweater that wink wink ironic ugly sweaters are making fun of. And nobody makes fun of my mom's fashion sense. Score Spencer.
Gosh. Oh, man.
Best decoration. AT-AT is great, but checkmate for the community figurines. I couldn't find a set for sale online, so I didn't have to answer the question, how much would I actually pay for these? Score Spencer. So, with a 4-1 victory, Spencer remains undefeated. Merry Nerdmas. Cheers, Peter Christensen.
See, now I'm starting to understand why Spencer didn't put out question of the week. He's afraid of losing, everyone. He's afraid of losing. He knew Peter would have his back. Blah, blah, blah. 4-1. Baloney.
4-1. I think in our scoring that we did it was much closer.
It was much closer. Look.
Yeah.
Y'all need to get to the supermarket and pick up a Reese's Tree. How do y'all not have these? They're a big deal over here. Everybody eats them. Everybody likes them.
I'm honestly surprised you just didn't send me one in the mail.
Maybe I will now. Daggum fetch, y'all. Come on now.
Merry Christmas. Eat this and prove yourself wrong.
Filthy animal. Anyway. Awesome.
All right,
Thanks,
well,
Peter.
Yeah, Peter. Appreciate it.
Love it.
Appreciate you being there for us and bailing me out this week. It literally was, I don't know, so much Christmas prep going on. Crazy stuff going on. Yeah. So anyway, thank you. What are we doing, Matt? What's going on? How can Super Friends help us this week?
So, same as always, everyone. Get out your phones, your tablets, your computers. Plug us in this New Year's Eve because Christmas has passed and we're looking forward to the new year. And commit your friends and family to listen to one podcast a week and make that the Fortress of Nerditude. We've got important things to say, only the most important things they're going to hear the whole week. You know this, we know this. So have them tune in, leave us a review, and you know what? How can we improve? Let us know how we can improve. We're looking forward to a new year. It's going to be awesome. We're going to do more of the same and some new things. I'm committing to that now. I don't know what we're going to do, but it's going to be really great. We have not talked about that at all. But We're open to all suggestions. Can't promise or change a thing, but we're open to it.
Someone asked me if we were going to do a sidekick podcast on every Star Wars, every Marvel Disney Plus show that came out. And I went, it's something we could talk about. I was like, I'm not committing myself or Matt to anything until I talk to you. But I like how right now you're just committing us to like, we're going to change things. We're going to do all this other stuff.
It's going to be a new show. Cookie Monster is going to be the host. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, we'll have to see about the Disney Plus stuff. We'll have to ask my wife if she's going to be okay with me being out another night.
Right. Yeah. That or
Maybe
we could
Star
figure
Wars.
Yeah, that or we figure out how to tack it all on and do it all on the same night. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I forgot to talk about something in my week update.
Oh, really?
But it was kind of intentional. Rise of Skywalker came out, and I saw that beast 2 times.
Oh, yeah.
In like a 24-hour period.
How was it? I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, shut up.
Just teasing. I seen it twice, too.
You saw it actually before me, at least the first time.
I did.
So I had a corporate event that I got to go see it, and then Brita and I had tickets. Brita actually was going to join us this week because we are doing a movie club on the Rise of Skywalker. But she's busy doing all the Christmas stuff, and she had, I was going to say wrapping to do. And so she just kind of said like, hey, I've got too much. I got to prepare the meal for tomorrow for Christmas Eve. So you guys just do it. And she did give me some notes and some things we'll talk about. So I want to say this right here, right now. If you have not seen Rise of Skywalker, pause the podcast because there's no way we can talk about this without talking spoilers. So from this point on, we are in a spoiler zone. You will hear things that will ruin this movie if you have not seen it. Pause it now. Okay, Matt. With that warning out of the way,
yeah,
let's talk about Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, let's do it.
So this is the final film in the Skywalker Saga. This is episode 9. It is also the final film of the what I call the sequel trilogy.
Yep.
We have the original trilogy, we have the prequel trilogy, and we have the sequel trilogy. Now, I did watch every single Star Wars movie right up to the night right before I went to go see Rise of Skywalker. It was not easy, but I put in the hard work to make it happen.
Yeah, well done.
And so there are some things that I will say that I've noticed as far as like overarching story when we kind of talk about things. When we get to that I can, I have a little bit of a different perspective now,
right?
Having just kind of watched it all straight through all the way. So let me ask you this.
Okay.
When you went and saw it the first time, you saw it on Thursday, correct?
Yes, Thursday.
What was the mood of the crowd, the audience you were with going into the film?
Medium. I've seen more excitement at Star Wars movies. I didn't get the feel. I don't know. It was it felt like nervous tension a little bit, I think. Because we're talking about the first showing and nobody has seen this movie yet, but the critics have seen it and it's not doing great with the critics on Rotten Tomatoes, at least, where I think most people kind of go to gauge what's going on.
Right, because the embargo lifted like 2 days before the movie came out.
So it felt kind of nervous.
Yep.
It felt a little bit like, usually when the opening crawl starts, it's like eruptions of joy. Maybe like 4 people. And I went and saw it in IMAX, and it was a huge screen and a huge theater, and I think everyone was a little bit on edge. That's how it kind of felt to me on that night.
I had a similar experience the next day because I was also at a corporate event. So it was, I'd say kind of a mixed bag, but it seemed like most people were fairly excited for it. Mm-hmm. But when the opening crawl and the opening text, in a galaxy far, far away, like all that, all that kind of stuff comes up, it was kind of the same thing. It was kind of nervous energy. Now, I'm not always one to go by the Rotten Tomatoes scores.
No, me either.
Because I know that like there's movies that have been critically panned that are beloved by audiences, and there's also been movies that have been loved by the critics but just don't hit with the audiences. But what's always telling to me is when a movie's embargo lifts like literally the day or 2 days before the movie actually hits theaters. That is almost always a sign that the studio does not have a lot of faith in the movie they're putting out.
Right.
Now, I don't want to say that that's necessarily true with this movie because it's a Star Wars movie.
You want to keep as many potential
spoilers and things close to the chest. I think that's more the reason.
I agree.
However, when it did release, I mean, I think it's sitting like at a 57% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics, which I think puts it as one of like the lowest rated Star Wars films.
Yeah, on Rotten Tomatoes,
Right.
Certainly of the Disney ones, it is dead last.
But by
like
far.
Way last.
Right. I saw that. I did see that before I went to the theater.
I did too. I was scared. I was like, oh no. Oh no.
Yeah. I was a little nervous. So I want to say this right off the top, and then we can get into things. We can talk about characters. We can talk about plot. We can talk about pacing, the visuals, the music. I think when it's all said and done, I'm going to come away and say that this was an okay movie, that I like it, but there's a lot of problems I have with it, and it left a lot of things for me in a place where I kind of went like, you had opportunities to make this a great movie, and you didn't capitalize on it. And I think that's where I'm going to shake out. Like, I remember when I came out of Last Jedi, I went,
yeah,
you made some strong, bold choices that doesn't sit well with me. And because of that, and because of some other issues that we have talked about, which I think we will have to talk about a little bit in tonight's episode, because it does tie into the next movie that we're talking about. That movie kind of soured me, and I kind of went, overall, I'm just kind of so-so on the whole sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
So I think at the end, though, I will say that I liked Rise of Skywalker. I think it's a fine movie in and of itself, but unfortunately it's a movie that has to fit inside of a already established universe, and there was a lot of things that I think were done poorly, could have been done better, and missed opportunities. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm probably going to have a little bit stronger feelings toward this one than you. I struggle to even say it's okay. I came out of my first viewing of Rise of Skywalker and was downright disappointed. And I've never left a Star Wars movie disappointed. This one I left disappointed. I was surprised at how disappointed I was.
See, that's kind of the flip. That's kind of the flip between you and me with like The Last Jedi. Because I went in really anticipating to like The Last Jedi, and I came out like, I was like, what the crap just happened? Like, I didn't like it. And for me, a Star Wars guy my entire life, I felt like I was betraying George Lucas somehow.
Right. And I get that. And that's kind of been my sentiment. Is like, hey, now I feel how people felt with The Last Jedi, but I'm also looking at the scores and going, I'm definitely not alone in this one. I mean, this is, like you said, we'll get into kind of the nitty gritties, and we probably don't even have time to get into everything that we would want to. But I've got a lot of issues with this movie, and I don't even know that it's specific to Star Wars issues. I just think it's movie issues.
Yeah.
Like, it was surprising to me, some of the choices, and I'm not talking about like, oh well, Luke is the way Luke is, like The Last Jedi. We're talking like just movie choices. I didn't understand. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so let's talk. Let's kind of talk at the high level. Rise of Skywalker is the follow-up to The Last Jedi, and a positive thing. It made $177 million domestically its opening weekend.
Yeah.
It made something like $198 million overseas. So it came in with like something like a $356 million opening weekend worldwide.
Yeah.
So it's a Star Wars movie. It's going to make money.
Right.
I don't think that's going to surprise anyone. We did allude to the fact that Rotten Tomatoes reviewed it, that a lot of critics reviewed it poorly for reasons we'll get into. But aside from that, if we go back in history a little bit, you got to remember that this sequel trilogy, the first movie was kind of supposed to be focused on Han Solo. The second movie was supposed to be focused on Luke Skywalker. And the third one was supposed to be on Leia Organa. However, Carrie Fisher died before she was able to do any filming on this film. Mm-hmm. So everything that they took, they made J.J. Abrams, because also you got to remember Colin Trevorrow was supposed to be the director.
Yeah.
And then he either left or was fired. They brought in J.J. Abrams and they kind of went, okay, after Rian Johnson's outing and how that did, they felt like they needed a safer director, right, someone that they could kind of trust with this. And The Force Awakens did really, really well, so they brought in J.J. So they switched some people that did some writing on it. They switched people who were going to be directing it. So you're going to get a shakeup. Then they lost Carrie Fisher, and they decided to honor her by not just writing her out of the script off screen, but they used some unused footage from The Force Awakens, because they had about 8 minutes of footage they could use, and they decided to basically drop her into scenes and then write dialogue around her dialogue to try to make her as much of a part of it as they possibly could. They had to, of course, digitally change some stuff with her hair, digitally change some backgrounds and stuff to make it look. And I gotta say, this is just my opinion, but while I respect the intention there to honor her and not just write her out, I like, on a human level, like, I think that's a great honor, and it's a good thing, and that the family was okay with it. The Fisher family was okay with it. But at the end of the day, when it comes to like how it worked in this film, I don't think it worked very well. There was a lot of just really generic dialogue she had.
Yeah.
And it all kind of looked a little, I don't know, fuzzy at times, because you could see that they were trying to work with it. How did you feel about what they decided to do with Carrie Fisher?
I was okay. I mean, anybody who knows anything about Star Wars knows going into this movie, she's dead. And she didn't record anything. I mean, nothing for this movie at all. So I was curious to see how much footage they had to use and how they were going to use it. But I will be honest, it did take me out of the movie when I knew what was going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which I get why they did it, and you got to honor Carrie Fisher. She's a legend. I get it. I don't know that I would have done it like this, because it takes me out of the movie, and I go, well, I know that she didn't really record this for this movie, and they're just using this dialogue because it's what they had.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I don't... It's a tough one. They did the best they could with what they had. I get it.
Right.
It didn't look that bad to me, but the dialogue was so vague.
Yep.
And they could have used it for anything.
Yep.
It was just... Yeah, it was weird.
So we had that. We had the shakeups, kind of behind the scenes stuff.
Yep.
But then the bigger issue, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty here, is you're bringing back J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams left a lot of breadcrumbs, we'll say, for Rian Johnson to pick up these threads of the story and run with them in The Last Jedi. And as we've talked about, Rian Johnson and whoever else was writing that, they basically just ignored a lot of those, or they played it off, they changed it, because a whole big theme in The Force Awakens for Rey was, who are her parents?
Yeah.
Where does she come from?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And her overarching story really does become, it's not where you come from, but it's who you choose to be, which I think is a great narrative character arc.
Right.
But in the second movie, we get this dialogue that Kylo Ren says, you know who your parents are, you've known all along. they were nothing but junk traders who sold
Right.
you for you know,
Drinking
for
money or
credits,
something.
for drinking money, right?
Right.
So now we get J.J. Abrams, who's going to come back, and here was my fear. While I did not like a lot of the choices in The Last Jedi, that's now established canon. Whether you like it or not,
Right.
it's established canon. Were we going to get J.J. Abrams coming back in and trying to retcon things that happened in The Last Jedi to match with The Force Awakens and what he wanted to do with Rise of Skywalker? Which I think I'd said to everyone who I'd talked to about this, that I think that would be a bad choice
Right.
for the movie, a bad choice narratively, because you're going to invalidate a lot of what just came before. You're going to have to work around stuff. It's going to feel clunky. The fanboy part of me wants that because I want to see some of the things that
Sure.
were done that I didn't like fixed or changed.
Right.
But as far as like appreciating a quality film, it's like, don't do that. You just cheapen what came before. You're going to make it a mess. It's going to be difficult. Rian Johnson left his movie where it was. J.J. Abrams came in and said, no, I'm retconning the crap out of this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make it work to what I want it to be. And I think he did that in an effort to service the fans.
Yes.
And I don't think that it was done well.
No, it sucked. I just don't understand it. I just don't. But this is from the perspective, and what I think is interesting is that you and I both have a lot of the same issues.
Yeah.
And we have very different opinions on The Last Jedi. But
Yes.
we can agree on The Rise of Skywalker mostly, I think.
I think so.
And I find that interesting, and I'm glad, because when I walked out of this movie, my first thought was, man, I didn't like it. I'm surprised how much I didn't like it. And my second thought was, gosh, Spencer's going to love this, and this podcast is going to be miserable. It's going to be his favorite movie, and it's going to be the opposite of when we talk about The Last Jedi. But I just don't understand all of the ways that JJ tried to, quote, fix The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had a brief discussion, spoiler, sometimes we talk about things before the podcast.
Right.
Just to kind of go over where we were on this. And he tried to fix the things that, to me, didn't really need to be fixed. Like the good parts that I think most people can agree on The Last Jedi were good. He tried to make them something different.
Yeah.
And it was weird.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of this stuff, right? So
Okay.
I think, oh gosh, there's so many places I can
I've
start.
got a list. I've got 1 through 20 of things we can talk about.
Let's talk about things. Let's talk about things that were tried to be retconned. So first of all, he went and retconned Rey's parents.
Yeah.
The whole thing, immediately there was this line that said, your parents were, your parents were nobodies because they chose to be nobodies.
Yeah.
And then we get this kind of short explanation of, and some flashback scenes that, Rey is now seen and remembering more of what happened, which it's like, okay, you killed this whole narrative in The Last Jedi. Now you're bringing it back for Rise of Skywalker, and you're literally taking what Kylo Ren said and you're going to change it and give us the whole, well, it's the truth from a certain point of view. And I kind of went like, no, come on. Like that just it feels so overdone.
Yep.
And then here's the other thing. We get a firm establishment that she doesn't remember anything than what we've seen. And then all of a sudden she's now having more flashbacks. So is that something to do with her force powers? Or is it just repressed memories? We don't know because we don't get enough explanation. I think this movie also suffers from the fact that it tried to just jump from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and keep you kind of constantly moving. But it didn't establish some things well enough or explain things well enough so that you look back and you go, I felt like the movie was trying to do the whole hyperspace skipping that they started at the beginning. That like, we're going to just try to keep you laughing in parts and moving along so you don't necessarily look at it too critically and notice things.
I noticed, JJ.
Yeah.
I noticed.
We retcon Rey's parents. So
I don't get
we do that.
I don't. Look, here's the one thing that I did say before the movie. I said, if Rey is a Skywalker, I will lose my mind because I'm going to be so mad because that's so stupid.
Right.
And I'm glad that at least that didn't happen from a bloodline perspective.
Right.
But
in my opinion, they did an even worse thing.
They did the next thing. They were like, well, we can't make her Skywalker, so what else could she be? I'm like, really? A Palpatine? Yeah. Like, there is no foreshadowing there's no allusion to Palpatine having any lineage.
So what makes this even worse to me was when they do the reveal that she's a Palpatine. I went, okay, first of all, we have nothing that's established that shows any of this. In any of these 2 previous films, there's nothing in any of the books that are considered canon. Right. So now we're just dropping this right here, which is just kind of classic JJ.
Yep.
But make matters worse, they try to show there's this whole scene where she's using the Force trying to pull down a transport from the sky, and Kylo's trying to pull it down. And then all of a sudden she shoots Force lightning out of her hand and blows it up. And then they try to say like, well, that was, a Palpatine thing. Power. It's like trying to show like that was the foreshadowing. And I went, wait a minute. Force lightning is not a hereditary issue. That comes from the dark side of the Force. She's been established firmly that she is the light side of the Force. How would she be able to tap into that? Like, you would have to learn that. Like,
I don't know.
To me, I went, you can't use this for foreshadowing. That doesn't work. It doesn't fit into the established lore that's already created. And I think that was something Brita talked about after she saw it, because we saw it together. And she asked what I thought. And I said, well, you tell me what you thought, because I did not want I did not want to kind of cloud what she thought with what I thought. And she said, that didn't make sense with her being a Palpatine. And she said, the biggest problem is you're trying to shoehorn things in to a very well-established franchise with established lore that goes back decades at this point. And you're trying to like change things and shoehorn things in. She's like, it just felt unnecessary. And I went, yeah. You're not wrong.
Right. Shoehorn is the perfect word, and I've used it all week as well. They're shoehorning like a mother trucker in this movie. And they expect you to just look past it like, that's fine. And Rey Palpatine is one of those things, and there's a lot of things in here. Just
the Emperor, just Palpatine, Sheev Palpatine being put into this movie just screams shoehorn in, because in the crawl it's like, a voice from the dead speaks, and Palpatine's come, and now Kylo Ren's trying to find him because he wants to destroy him, so he continues to be the big bad in the universe.
Yep.
And I kind of went, well, he was following Snoke, and Snoke was his master, so why wouldn't he then go seek out the Emperor and go find Palpatine and then further train with him? Like, it doesn't make sense that he would immediately just try to like, I'm going to kill him because I'm the supreme leader. Doesn't make sense.
No, the opening crawl, there's so many better ways to open this movie, and the way they did it was, it started out as a mess to me, and I was really nervous after the first few scenes. I was like, I'm not going to like this movie, and I'm nervous that this is going to be how the whole movie is, and it was, and I was disappointed. And I think what you said earlier was the established lore, or what we've come to know as what Star Wars is. It was pretty messy, I feel like, in that respect and regard. And I don't say anything about JJ. I don't know how much of a Star Wars fan he is. He did a good job with The Force Awakens.
Pretty big from what I hear. Yeah.
But it seemed weird.
So here's something else you got to think of, right? Snoke was set up to be, the guy pulling the strings for Kylo. Then The Last Jedi happens and Kylo kills him. And we don't get any more details. Mm-hmm. Well, now we're going to do a third movie. Where's going to be the antagonist? Because Kylo Ren is kind of towing this line like he is the antagonist in a way.
Sort of, right.
But he's sort of like he's not.
Well, you don't want him to die.
Sorry, say it again.
I said, you're still pulling for him a little bit.
Yes,
you're not angry at him that much. He killed Han Solo, and I get that's a thing. But you could see the struggle, and you want him to be redeemed regardless.
Right.
And that doesn't change in The Last Jedi with the I mean, it just doesn't change. You still want him to be redeemed.
There's that inner conflict.
Right.
And so killing off Snoke, all of a sudden is like, oh, well, now we have to have someone who's evil. What do? We bring back Palpatine. And I kind of went, but there's no mention of him in these other two movies. It's nothing. And so we do get a quick little line about, the dark side has explored things that would be considered unnatural, which goes back to Revenge of the Sith, when Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine's talking to Anakin and telling the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise, who used to be his Sith master, about how they basically try to explore how to become immortal using the Force and manipulating midichlorians. And here's the problem. We get more detail in the prequels about midichlorians and cloning technology, that when we get to this movie, and we haven't talked about clones in any of these two sequel trilogy movies, we haven't talked about midichlorians at all.
Nope.
That all of a sudden we see some cloning tanks with Snokes in them, and the Emperor's back, and the question is, well, is this the Emperor that fell down the air shaft in Return of the Jedi, or is this a clone? Not exactly sure, because they're not very clear about it. And we don't get any detail on how he has come back, what has happened, what has transpired. And I think that was something that we needed to have to make it at least a little more believable. I'm talking about a sci-fi movie, and I'm saying, we need more believability.
Right.
But in an established canon, an established, universe.
Yes.
You kind of have to follow by somewhat of the rules that govern that universe. And we don't get a lot of that here.
We get none of that, pretty much, as it pertains to Palpatine. You get nothing. And, I think they just expected us to be like, wow, so cool. Oh, my gosh, all the nostalgia in the world. I'm so happy he's back. Oh, wow, they're back. Oh, wow, he's back. That they didn't expect us to look at this and go, what? I get it, but that doesn't make sense.
Right.
How the heck is he back? And he's like a zombie, kind of? So maybe it's his old corpse, but how are we supposed to... And his eyes are not working right. And it was weird. That whole beginning thing... There's a lot of things I like about this movie, honestly, and I'm going to talk about those positive things. We promise we will talk positive.
We will, right?
Because there are cool things in this movie, but there are cool things that are foiled by stupid things that don't make sense. Like when I saw the beginning of the movie, which is lightspeed skipping to the max, the first half of the movie is we're not going to let you sit still. Right. We're going to make you go from moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. And that to me is so not Star Wars. When you watch these, because we watched a lot of these films leading up to this, it's a slow burn. There's a good reveals, there's slow reveals. Star Wars is storytelling. It's not an action-packed crazy movie. Very rarely when you watch Star Wars. There's obviously space battles and stuff, but it is a family soap opera, right? I mean, that's what it is. And that continued, I think, with The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. It's slow with action here and there, and then we get this movie and it's like ba 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 ba. Right. It's like you forgot what Star Wars is a little bit in that respect, as far as a storytelling perspective, because there's just too much going on at the beginning. We're expected to believe that we just accept Palpatine is back. Kylo Ren's going all over the place. He just killed all these people, these random village folk at the very beginning of the movie, which I've now come to find out is Mustafar. Right. And he's going towards Darth Vader's castle. And I'm going, how cool would that have been if you would have told us in the moment, he's going to Mustafar and he's going to Darth Vader's castle because he's got to find a way to get to Palpatine. It's just tell us. That's cool stuff that I want to know. That's prequel stuff that I want to know, because I'm a big Star Wars fan, not just an original trilogy fan. I want to know everything. Right. I was bugged when I found that out. I was like, well, now I know it, but it's stupid that I didn't know that when I saw the movie. Anyway, I've got lots of fresh.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, there's other things storytelling wise, so Palpatine went out into the into the outer regions, right? The unknown regions, which is interesting because there was a book series by Chuck Wendig called the Aftermath series that are canon. He wrote these, and basically it's it kind of takes place right at the time that the Empire's fallen. There's the big battle in Jakku, and that's on there. And then basically a group of Imperial soldiers, they go out into the unknown, And basically they form with a whole bunch of kids that they've taken.
Yeah.
They form what will grow, and they continue to recruit out in the unknown regions, because the unknown regions are just part of space that hasn't been mapped by the Republic.
Yeah.
But they're systems, but they recruit more, and that's where the First Order comes from, which isn't very well set up in the movies. That you would know that unless you've read those books. So like this one, like it kind of ties back into that idea that Palpatine and the Final Order are out in the unknowns, and you're like, okay, that's fine, but then why wouldn't we have known more about it? And if Palpatine was actually pulling Snoke's thing, like why wouldn't we have seen this? Also, he snaps his finger, and we get like 200 Star Destroyers that all bust up from underneath the ice. Who's controlling these things? Who's running them?
That bugged me so much.
From a storytelling perspective, it doesn't make any sense. Also, they all have miniaturized, weaponized version of the Death Star cannon on each of them. And I went, JJ, you reused this idea already with Starkiller Base. And fans said, hey, you're just redoing Episode 4. Now we're saying, hey, we're redoing Return of the Jedi, and we also have a planet-killing device, but we've also mounted it on every single one of these Star Destroyers. Which, here's the other thing too, Matt, when you look at it from a narrative perspective. The First Order came back in The Force Awakens in this timeline like a year or two earlier. Maybe 3 years tops, right?
Right.
So if that's the case, and Palpatine had these 200 or so ships, why didn't we get any of that tech? Why didn't Snoke bring any of that tech at that point? Like, why wouldn't you have unleashed... It's things where I go, okay, we have to up the stakes. We have to try to make it bigger and badder for this finale so that we feel like there's something real happening. But here's the problem, Matt. I didn't feel that there was any real stakes in this movie whatsoever. I never once... after the first time something happened with Chewbacca, I never once then, the rest of the movie, had any inclination that any of our main characters that we truly cared for were going to die.
Agreed. 100%. There are so many glaring issues with this movie. When I see a movie, I want to be moved. I want to be invested. Sometimes I just want to be entertained. But with Star Wars, for it to be entertained, it needs to be moving. It needs to feel real. It needs to feel important. And I 100% agree with you. I never one time, after what happened, especially after what happened with Chewie, I went, F you, JJ, nothing's going to happen in this.
Yep.
Like, I'm not scared for anybody. Nothing's going to happen. It's going to be predictable. And it's exactly what I thought.
So there was that moment, right, when Chewie gets put on that transport.
Yeah.
And then the whole battle, and I'm pulling, then Rey all of a sudden shoots Force lightning and blows it up. And like she freaks out and starts screaming. Yeah. And Finn is screaming. Yep. And I sat there and went, oh crap. Yeah. They just killed Chewie. But for me, I went like, oh, like it was emotional. It was visceral. Like I was like, because I've known this character for decades and he's beloved. How can you not love Chewbacca?
Yep. Yep.
And so I felt that and I went, oh wow, if they start killing off these characters like they did with Han Solo, like that's what made The Force Awakens work on some level, because they killed one of the main original trilogy characters and it felt like, oh, there's real stakes. Like no one's going to be safe here, especially because we know they're aging actors and they're not going to do any more after this trilogy, right? But it's like, oh, like they don't have to kill Chewie, but they killed Chewie off. I was like, ooh, this thing could get dark. We could lose some serious people and give it some real emotional stakes that would be invested. And then literally a minute and a half later, we see Chewie and he's fine. He was on a different one. So there was all of a sudden there was this second transport. It's just a red herring. It's just, it drove me nuts.
Storytelling. Like, it's come terrible. On. What are you
doing? I immediately said, well, no one's going to die. No one that we really care about. No one that's central and integral going forward is going to die.
So when Chewie died, it's a hand over your mouth moment. Like, oh, wow. I went into this movie and the game I was playing with everybody that was in the car with me, I said, do they live or do they die? And I went through like all the main characters and some of the minor-ish characters and do they live or do they die? Worthless game.
Right.
They all lived.
Right.
Except one. And the one that did die is stupid anyway.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So when Chewie died, I went, oh my gosh. And then I went, it should have been done better.
Yeah.
You know, like if Chewie's really dead, that's a sucky way to kill him. Like he deserved a better death than that.
Right.
So either way, I was going to be a little bit upset because, like you said, Chewie is special. And Chewie needs to die for something, you know, like sacrifice something. And so I was mad. And then he got brought back and I was like double mad because I was like, God, this is so stupid.
Yeah. Now, when they do kill Leia, which you knew had to happen because Carrie's not there, obviously, I don't think any fan wasn't really going to have that emotional gut punch because we knew what had to happen. Yeah. I mean, it's sad. I mean, but I'm just being honest. Like,
of course.
But what I did love that they did do was they had Chewie have this emotional reaction. Because you think about it, Chewie pledged a life debt to Han, and then when Han marries Leia, his life debt now covers her, and also covers their son, Ben Solo, Kylo Ren. However, that, gets a little muddied with the fact that, Kylo just killed Han.
Right.
But when Leia dies and you see the anguish on Chewbacca and Chewbacca has a meltdown, that I went, ooh. Like, that actually had a bit of an emotional impact for me.
I agree.
And I felt it. I knew I wasn't going to feel it when Leia actually died herself, but to see the trauma that it was causing Chewie, because in that universe, obviously, it's not actors, whatever, so you feel it. And, like, I thought that was written very, very well. Yep. And I totally bought off on the emotionality of that moment.
Yeah, and we're hitting some of my bigger issues with the movie right off the bat, the stakes and then the lack of deaths. I mean, those are, to me, it was done wrong too.
Yep.
The Chewie death, if he were to die there, it wasn't done right. And then later on, we get somebody that's been around longer than Chewie, and that's 3PO. And we know him more than we know most characters because he's been in all of them.
All the way from the very first Phantom Menace all the way through.
Yes, we've seen him naked without any of his gold shielding.
Yeah, his outer shell.
Arm. Yeah. We've seen him all over the place.
With a silver leg?
Yes. And this was the one that I predicted would die because I wanted him to die because that to me would draw an emotional reaction because he's funny and we feel him.
Right.
And it was not... I'm frustrated because in the trailer they showed the part where he looks at the people in the room and says, "What are you doing?" "I'm looking at my friends," or the last time I'm looking at my friends, and I go, "Well, you barely know them." Right. That's my initial thought. You barely know these people, and I'm like, surely there's other people in this room, right? Like,
and Chewie was in the room.
Luke and that's true. But anyway, that emotional connection didn't hit for me at all when he's like, "I'm looking at my friends for the last time." That I was like, really? And then the fact that he gets his mind erased. It should be a massive moment.
Yep.
But it for whatever reason, it did not hit me. I didn't feel it. And then he gets his mind restored later in the movie, and I went, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
There are literally no stakes. There's no sacrifice. There's nothing going on here. There's no consequences for your actions. Everybody's going to be fine.
Yeah, the C-3PO one, I too kind of went like, okay, he's saying goodbye, and I get what they're trying to do emotionally here, but they even make they allude to the fact like, R2's memory banks for backups are really unreliable. If they would have said like, hey, R2 can't restore him, and so like his first memories are Babu Frick and everyone there, like. Right. Babu Frick, that's one of my oldest friends. Like that, like I laughed at that moment. I was like, oh, that's clever writing. Well done.
Yes.
But if they couldn't have restored his memory, so he would have not remembered Princess Leia. He would not remembered Han and Luke and Chewie. Like that emotionally, I would have been like, oh gosh, it's a droid. I get it. It's a fictional world. We're talking about a movie. Like I understand, like at some level, this kind of all sounds a little silly, but like that would have like, I think, emotionally been a little more impactful in that moment.
Agreed completely.
But of course, they go back to like, hey, I'm going with Mistress Rey on her first training mission. Oh, wait, that's already happened? It's like, okay, well, now he's back to being basically who he was about a year earlier.
Yeah, it was... Yep. That was
a missed opportunity. So that's the thing. Like the Chewie death, the C-3PO reboot, all missed opportunities.
Yep.
Do they work in this film? Sure, at some level, but a missed opportunity to really drive home the fact that this is the last of the Skywalker saga.
Yes.
You know, there's this whole thing where Rey basically kills Kylo Ren on the Death Star, you know, on the chunk of the Death Star, whatever.
Yes.
And it was, you know, Leia's sacrifice that, you know, got him to like stop. And then foreshadowing of things will happen later. She uses the Force to heal him and, you know, prevent him from dying.
Right.
Because he was on his way out. He wasn't completely dead. And then she's like, you know, like, I wanted to hold your hand. I wanted to hold Ben's hand, and kind of the whole, like, you know, I want to be with you, but I want to be with the good version of you, the turned version. But they had this moment I went like, okay, I knew they weren't going to kill off Kylo Ren right now because there's still more movie that has to happen. But then we jump to the final death. And this was the one, Matt, honestly, the other ones I just kind of went missed opportunities. This last one actually pissed me off. And I went, this is a massively huge missed opportunity. When Rey dies and Kylo Ren, when Ben Solo comes back and picks her up and is holding her there and her body's just limp, I wanted them to leave Rey dead.
Yep.
I went, if they do this and they leave her dead, that's really saying like, hey, this is the end of this trilogy. This is the end of this story. We're moving on. It's going to be a nice coda. They could have this big emotional moment, and they could leave Ben Solo as the last of this kind of, you know, bloodline, with him not being able to go back to the Resistance because no one knows that he's turned.
Right.
He can't do anything. Everyone's going to assume he killed Rey.
Right.
He's going to be an outcast. He's not, you know, he's kind of given up on the Sith side. He's turned back. And so, like, they could use his character in something else, an animated show, and something else, and say, like, you know, here's how he's trying to cope with this. And, like, the emotional loss of the fact that, like, he killed his father. His mother basically sacrificed what little life she had left to try to communicate with him to help change him. And that the woman he kind of, you know, kind of is in love with and kind of has this, like, connection with just died to save him and to kind of save all humanity, basically. Yeah. And then he's going to have to walk off into the sunset. I thought that would have been excellent storytelling and would have had real emotional stakes. Instead, he uses the Force to heal her and bring her back from death, which we just heard from Palpatine moments ago, earlier in the film, that the Sith have learned how to do this over decades, and only it's known to a few. And we see that Palpatine's barely alive, right? But somehow Kylo Ren has never learned this, never studied this, and he's able to bring back Rey from the dead. And in doing so, he gives up enough of his life essence that he dies. And I went, okay. No one that's big characters are going to die unless they're dead in real life. This is such a missed opportunity for great storytelling. But I get it. Disney didn't want to go out that way. They wanted to keep their main three characters alive for their own reasons. But I think story-wise, it's a huge missed opportunity.
I agree. And this is the story of this movie, is so many missed opportunities and ways to tie things into the overall franchise of Star Wars, because I felt like because people hate on the prequels, JJ thought nobody likes the prequels, so I'm not going to mention them or talk about them hardly at all.
Right.
Maybe a few little like quote lines from Palpatine, but outside of that, nobody wants to see that again. And that to me is a little frustrating, because
they're canon.
Whether you like it or not, those are Star Wars movies, and they have their own merit. Like, there's some good stuff in those. Dialogue might be terrible, And the
Definitely.
acting subpar at moments.
Right.
But there's good storytelling in there still. And I was really annoyed with his lack of vision as it pertains to the first 3 movies, the prequels, I should say. Yep. Only the original trilogy, that's it. And this last death really bugged me. Because I went, this couldn't save the film, but it could make it a much better movie if Rey dies and Kylo stays alive. Because there are so many ways you could take Kylo after that. Yep. And your version, one of them, and a great one, and a heartbreaking but important story in the arc of a hero. Because the arc of a hero, they're not always a hero. Like, there's a tragedy in some of these heroes. And that's the way that storytelling has to work. You create these infallible characters. It gets hard to believe. And I don't know the story of Superman, but that's my problem with Superman, is it seems to me in the things that I've been exposed to, he's always perfect and he always has all the powers. And same with Captain Marvel. She's always perfect. She has all the power, blah, blah, blah. But when I look at Rey, I go, man, like, always perfect. All the power in the world. I don't understand exactly how that always happens. And then she lives anyway after what would have been a great arc for her, is like she literally dies to save the world. Almost, where it's Christmas time, almost Christ-like in the sacrifice of dying for the world. And it doesn't matter. It's like, I'll die and then I'll come back and then everything will be fine.
So I think you brought up something that's interesting, and rewatching all the movies in order helped me see this a little clearer, because it's been a little while since I've watched the prequels and kind of forgotten, is that the story of Star Wars is literally about the balance of the Force, right? The Force wants to balance itself out. And for, thousands of generations prior to the prequels, the Sith and the Jedi had fought each other. And the Jedi had pretty much won out. The Sith were pretty much in hiding. But then we get the prequels, and you realize that Palpatine, as Darth Sidious, along with Darth Plagueis before he was killed, has basically been manipulating trade,
it's beautiful,
politics, the economy of the galaxy to set up a place where the Trade Federation can legally come in and blockade a planet and cause a crisis that has to be resolved, which this crisis is all basically being used to manipulate to get rid of the existing leadership so Palpatine can become leader. And then from there, it's now we're going to take what the Jedi's fear was, because there was a Jedi, Sifo Dyas, who we hear about in Attack of the Clones, who has this vision that there's going to be this big battle and that clones are going to be needed in order to help out. And Sidious finds this out, and so he finds a way to twist it and uses his own person in Jango Fett, puts the chip in, Order 66, and basically finds a way to then use the Jedi's fear against themselves and position them into becoming the quote-unquote bad guys to the Republic, so that we end up having to wipe out the Jedi. The Sith are using everything they can to manipulate the galaxy into helping wipe out the Jedi for them, so they can take control.
Yep.
And they help create Anakin Skywalker. And Anakin Skywalker ends up, being twisted and turned by the machinations of Palpatine. Then we get into the original trilogy, and the Empire, which has grown out of the Republic, is, now is controlled by a Sith. And there's 2, and you got the rule of 2 still going. And they're controlling the whole galaxy. And so there, now we get Luke Skywalker, who rises up, and Obi-Wan Kenobi comes out of retirement to train him. Yep. And the rebellion comes back to fight to try to balance this out. And at the end of Return of the Jedi, we get this kind of somewhat seeming balance, but they've overthrown the Sith now.
Yep.
And then when we get into the sequel trilogy, we really don't get any of that overarching story in Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. J.J. Abrams does try to bring it back to that overarching story in Rise of Skywalker, but I feel like it's a little too late, in my opinion. I do appreciate the effort to try to say, I'm going to try to retcon some of what happened in the previous 2 films here in the sequel trilogy, and to try to give it some of that overall. We're going to bring that back in Palpatine. We're going to do this. But I went, man, if you're looking at that whole overarching story, prequels, original trilogy to now, if you would have had Rey stay dead and the Emperor is dead, would we not be at a place where there would be more balance in the Force, where we wouldn't have this hugely powerful light Jedi now that just basically saved the entire galaxy? She wouldn't exist, and the Palpatine wouldn't exist, and the only person left, kind of that's, that we're familiar with, obviously, because other people can become Force sensitive, would be Kylo Ren, who was bad, but then turned good, and is probably going to be as close to neutral right now as possible.
Right. It was, it didn't make, that was a very good explanation. Overview of everything. The sequel trilogy feels like a trilogy on its own. It's not even a Skywalker Saga to me. It just is a mess. When you look at, now that we have all 3 films, I go, well, this is just a disaster. Who was in charge of creating a scene for 3 films? They didn't. They did not do that. They did not stick with a vision. It's almost like there were 2 visions, and the person who got the first and the last word, just the second one, it
they
was
win,
weird. But I agree and don't agree with the whole Last Jedi, because I feel like the whole thing Luke was trying to say was, if there has to be balance, there is always going to be a Sith. If I stay in the middle and I don't interfere, maybe that will balance things out. That's what I get from it, and that's what he's trying to say. And I realize he's wrong, because there's going to be evil no matter what.
So admittedly, I understand where narratively Luke might think that, but the problem is, Luke is the big one that redeemed everything and kind of whatever.
Yeah.
And so Kylo Ren rose up. But at that point, wouldn't it just be easy to say, well, if I just go into hiding and try to remain as neutral as possible and cut myself off from the Force, that doesn't still balance stuff out, because you still have this Sith that you've helped create. It still has to be dealt with. It just, narratively stuff starts to fall apart. And here's the thing. Whether you love, or hate George Lucas with the prequels, his writing, I understand, could be wooden and some really bad dialogue.
Right.
But he did have an overall vision of, hey, I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell these stories to help create a narrative arc that gets us to where we're at in the original trilogy that is going to tie in and make a little bit more sense. And I did get a greater appreciation this last week for that.
Dude,
but then when I watched these ones, I went, that's not there. And George Lucas sold to Disney before that. And so I know he gave some ideas of what he would like to see happen, but they didn't really necessarily do that. They wanted to do kind of their own thing.
Yep.
And I think you'll hear people say, well, the original trilogy wasn't written with an overarching story. I was like, well, George wrote the first one, and then he was consulting on the other one and, helped write parts of it and, gave a lot of input because he still owned that.
Right.
Same thing with Return of the Jedi. But with these ones, it was just we're going to let this director and these writers tell a Star Wars story, and then we're going to let this next one hopefully pick up where they went. Oh, whoops, he didn't pick up where he went. He invalidated a lot of that stuff and didn't follow up on it. Now we're going to go back to the original guy here and see if we can try to piece this thing back together.
And that's the biggest problem with this movie, is it tries to correct a storyline that's just dead. Just let it be dead. Yeah. And that's my biggest issue with this movie, is I think people came to terms. I mean, Last Jedi, it's been 2 years. Okay, you're either upset about this or you're not upset about this, but it's been out 2 years and that's the way it is. And now JJ's like, no, it's not. And I just don't understand. So there are so many issues that I have, and I'm going to go through them now.
Yeah, I'll say let's hit some of the nitpicky stuff. Let's go through it.
So first thing I've got on my list, and you mentioned this in kind of leading into the discussion of The Rise of Skywalker, pacing. Pacing for me was a mess. Just absolutely a mess. It was, like you said, light speed skipping or whatever it's called. That's how this movie was. It never let me feel. It never slowed down to let me... I feel like I never got to feel the moment and appreciate that I was watching the last Skywalker Saga Star Wars film. It was so frenetic. And that's not, like I mentioned earlier, that's not necessarily what I want from a Star Wars movie. I want to feel the music and feel the moment and have the slow reveal and the slow burn. And I didn't get that.
Yep.
It was for me, it was an absolute mess. And then, we already talked about Palpatine. How the heck is he alive? Here's my next one. the introduction of these useless new characters where we just don't have the time and they don't have a real purpose to them for me. I don't understand all of the reasons why they're introduced.
Like, oh, there's this whole group of former
Jana,
stormtroopers.
Yeah, why does that matter? Just because we needed more people to run on a Star Destroyer in the sky?
I think you're... Yeah, with horses, which none of that made sense. I think originally, though, the storyline was supposed to be that Jana was Lando Calrissian's daughter that had been kidnapped as a young kid and conscripted. And I think that they cut that storyline out. So when he sits down with her at the end and he's like, where are you from? She's like, I don't know. He's like, let's find out. Yeah. Like, some people kind of thought like he was hitting on her. I'm like, no, I don't think so at all. I don't get that. Agree. I just think this is something that was still there from a storyline that got cut.
Yep. Agreed. The next one, low stakes. So low. Yep. So disappointing how low the stakes felt to me. And what I will point out right now, since we're talking about low stakes, should I point this out now? Okay, here's one of my, here's one of, no, I'm not going to talk about that right now. We're going to skip that. We'll talk about that in a minute. The next thing that I found to be just kind of like one of those, there's a lot of moments where I was watching and I went, okay, I guess that's the way it was because it's in this movie and that's canon now, was Leia's whole story.
Yep.
I went, that flashback happened. I went, okay, I guess that Leia was trained as a Jedi now. And then she had a vision and then she had a lightsaber and then Luke took it and hid it away in a cave.
On the last night of her training, when she would become a Jedi Knight, she decides to cut herself off from the Force and like walk away.
Gosh.
Okay. That story makes no sense.
What a mess.
It makes no sense. I get it. I also feel like they wanted to like show like that she was doing something. And if you go to the old expanded universe stuff that's, now considered legends.
Right.
In some of those books, Luke did train Leia.
Sure.
But she never really had enough time to fully devote to it because she was running the New Republic.
Right.
And, she was the head of the entire Republic. So she never became a full Jedi, but she did have some abilities and she did have a lightsaber. And I kind of wish they would have went that route, that she'd had some training, but not ever really enough. But like we see Rey calling her master.
That was weird.
I was like,
wrong.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I was like, this doesn't make any sense because we haven't established that Leia has any Force abilities other than the crazy, what we're attributing
Mary
to
Poppins.
The Mary Poppins, the Superman moment where, but that was more of like the Force reacting to help preserve her and keep her alive. Right.
Like it's your last gasp at life and the Force is willing you to survive.
Right.
And then this
However, okay. The other thing about this whole thing too, Matt, which this whole story with Leia, and I get it. I know what they're trying to do because Carrie's not there. So they're trying to find a way to give her a story. When Rey is using the lightsaber and then she hands it back and you realize that this is Anakin/Luke's lightsaber, that thing was destroyed in the previous movie. How is it whole again? How is it not show like it's been like welded together? Like that makes no sense. Like that's just a continuity issue.
Yes.
And I went, okay, come on. Like this makes no sense.
What a mess. The whole thing is a mess.
And if Leia did have a lightsaber, why not use that lightsaber at that moment?
No, I don't know. It was weird. And the whole training sequence with Rey, I get that they're trying to show that she was training because we've all been complaining like how does she this good?
Automatically,
but to
she's
me,
got
it still doesn't do anything for me. There's useless things in that. She like climbs a tree and cuts down this red rope and okay, she never uses the red thing again. She doesn't use it as a blindfold. She doesn't use it as anything.
What's the point?
And my question is, okay, so she cuts it. This is just me being OCD. Like, man, who's the one who has to jump up there and tie a new rope? Because she's cutting it down every time.
Probably her.
But why is she doing that? None of it made any sense. Okay, so Leia's story, we both agree, that was just... I don't get it. And then I've got like minor qualms with Maz Kanata, just brought back in because she's a character that we know.
That, and she was in the last Jedi, kind of like fighting.
Yes.
I think what they decided to do was like with bringing in Maz, because she does have some understanding of the Force and Luke, it gave them an opportunity to have someone stand in for Carrie Fisher to kind of have some of the dialogue and the lines that probably would have belonged to Carrie if she had been able to film this movie.
Right. That one didn't bug me as much. The next one bugs the crap out of me because this character deserves so much better. And that's Lando. Lando's character to me makes no sense in this movie. No sense to me at all. And they try to explain it away with little things like, I sent him a transmission, or Leia sent me a transmission. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that you've been stuck on this planet after you and Luke. You've just been hanging out on this desert planet for no reason at all?
For how long?
How many years? 40? I don't know. You're just sitting on this planet, and then all of a sudden you happen to be in the right location because Leia sent you a message that this is where they're going. Why didn't Leia just send them to you initially?
Right.
This doesn't make any sense. And then Lando's like, no, my flying days are over. And then all of a sudden he's back at the Resistance base, and I'm like, what's going on, man? This is a great character. We just got like a whole movie basically dedicated to him, even though I know it's called Solo, but
it's
Donald
a Lando
Glover
film.
Is the freaking man. As I was disappointed. My son is named after this character, and I just was so disappointed at how they just threw him in for nostalgia for no purpose. Anybody could have filled this role, and that was really a bummer for me. And now we're going to go into one of my biggest bummers of the film, and it has to do with Lando. And they're like, okay, Lando, you're going to go to the core systems with Chewie, and you're going to send a message. And in the previous film, it's very clear no one is coming.
Right.
No one is coming to save you. Luke has to force project himself to make it possible for you guys to escape.
And basically kill himself to save them. Yeah.
No one is coming, and you've got to figure out how to rally the troops. And you're telling me that Lando and Chewie running around for an hour is going to bring in like millions of Resistance sympathizers who are going to fight in this very dangerous. It was so dumb.
Yeah.
And I thought there are so many ways to make that scene better, because it's supposed to be emotional, right? Like Poe's like, we're gonna die. I'm sorry, guys. This is the end. And then Lando's, there's more of us. And I'm like, this could be a cool moment. Oh man, what's gonna happen? They show all these ships. I'm like, oh cool. I'm getting the chills. But then that's it.
Yeah.
I don't care if these ships get blown up because I don't know who's on them. Show me. This is one of those moments where
we did see one. We did see one person.
We see Wedge who comes back, which is a great callback.
Yeah.
But this is, again, the original trilogy. Only a few hardcore fans are going to know or care because he doesn't actually say who he is.
And also, Wedge arrives just right after his adopted, or his stepson, Snap, Wexley dies. And I was just like, oh, there was a
moment you could have where they're fighting.
But that's also something that would have been established through the books. So visually in the film, a lot of fans probably wouldn't have understood that.
Right. So it just bugged me. I'm like, I go and I say, there's so many missed opportunities in this movie, and this is one of them.
Yep.
Even if it's quick, show Chewie and Lando, and I get they want to have this big moment where people are just show up out of nowhere.
Right, it's a surprise. It's a moment. Yeah.
There's two ways you could have done this better. One is to show them actually doing this and having to convince people to come and fight. Having a Rogue One moment where there's a reason they come together. The other way, which I think is the better way, which is more of a continuity thing with The Last Jedi, is show the legend of Luke being reborn, like it was at the end of The Last Jedi, when you see these kids pretending they're Luke and they're telling the story of how Luke stood up in front of all of these AT-ATs and Kylo Ren and his legend, right? Because then that reinforces the fact that at the end, Luke was redeemed in this movie. He did what he could. He's not the Last Jedi, and then it makes sense. Oh wow, Luke Skywalker he sacrificed himself for the Resistance. There's a reason for us to all rally together. There is hope. But instead we get what we got, which to me is just a huge missed opportunity. We don't see who's in the ships. They could have shown the Gungans. They could, there's so many different races and species that they could have showed that we would have been like, awesome. They're here. Oh, they're here. Oh, there's some Wookiees. There's some, whatever Admiral Akbar is. There's some,
Mon Calamari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many things they could have done and they didn't. And that was frustrating. Anyway.
Yep. A couple other things here to kind of go off of some of your things. When Rey shows up, on Octo and she throws the lightsaber and Luke catches it, I went, okay. This was one of those moments where I'm like, okay, great. We're going to see Luke a little more like we knew him in the original trilogy. But I was like, it doesn't make any sense with The Last Jedi because he literally says, like, a Jedi should be more careful with their weapon. I was like, he literally, before he died, was handed that thing and threw it over his shoulder. I was like, I don't want this crap.
Right.
And like, I was just like, oh, that didn't make any sense. But even worse, in my opinion, is the fact that I don't care if we see some new Force abilities.
Right. Some of them are cool.
Some of them are cool.
And make sense.
And like the whole like Force Skype conversations that were going on in The Last Jedi, I kind of went, oh, okay, we've seen that established before.
Right.
Luke and Vader, Luke and Leia, Empire Strikes Back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Now we're taking it to like a bigger level. They're talking over further distances. But in this film, all of a sudden, Kylo Ren reaches through the Force, through time and space, and rips a necklace off of her.
Yeah.
Then they destroy a thing together through time and space, weirdly through the Force. And the Vader mask falls and he realizes. And then at the end of the freaking movie, she freaking pulls a magician act like she's Houdini. She puts the lightsaber behind her head.
Yeah.
And then it mysteriously shows up in Kylo Ren and he just kind of like shrugs.
Right.
And then he goes to town against the Knights of Ren with it. I hated every single part of that. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
It's not just like a Force ability, but now we're breaching time and space in order to reach through like a fabric in time and space to pull an object through. I just kind of went, this doesn't make any sense in this universe that's established at all. None.
Yeah.
It's just a convenient plot point, a convenient MacGuffin to get to a thing where we can do the thing.
Right.
Hated it.
I didn't mind it. I like the Force Skype.
The Force Skype's fine.
And I will say this, in JJ's defense, JJ's defense, Rian Johnson, JJ, whatever, there is some precedent for that in The Last Jedi when he feels the wetness of the rain. When Kylo Ren feels the wetness of the rain on Ahch-To when they're not actually talking. Anyway, but that doesn't matter. I'll go back to your point about Luke. I hated this for Luke. I just was so sad because I wanted it to be better than it was. I wanted it to be certainly more emotional and less predictable than it was.
And also, once you know Carrie's not going to be in the film, why not use Force Ghost Luke more than you used him?
Totally. I wanted Force Luke
That's a
to
missed
be
opportunity.
Training her, actually.
Yes.
I don't know why that didn't happen. That would have been a way better storyline. Because look, love or hate The Last Jedi, for me at the end it's clear Luke is redeemed. He is a legend. He understood that he was wrong, that he wanted the Jedi to continue, because he literally says, and I will not be the last Jedi. And the chills come and he faces off and you get the big moment where she's lifting the rocks and everyone escapes. Like that to me, I still get the chills just talking about it because it's such a cool moment when all of that happens and you realize what's going on and the projection dies. And it's such a cool moment for Luke and his story. And then we go to this last one, Rise of Skywalker, and he does the stupid thing, like you said.
Yeah.
First of all, it's dumb that he comes out of the fire and grabs it. Like, how cliche and dumb is that?
Yeah.
Like, The Last Jedi did it, in my opinion, did it so cool. Just slowly panning the camera, and you see Yoda sitting there, and you're like, oh, how awesome. It's not in your face. It's subtle. It's beautiful. And then in this one, it's like, here I come out of the fire to grab your lightsaber. And then I'm going to mention again and again how wrong I was and how much that's not the way I am. And I go, anyone who can pay attention to the subtleties of movie making and really appreciates Star Wars can see, obviously, Luke was wrong. He knows he was wrong.
Yep.
He died because he was wrong.
JJ's just beating us over the head with the fact he's retconning the character.
Yeah, I'm saving him. Remember, it was me that saved him. Not the end of The Last Jedi. That did not redeem him because he's not a legend, even though it's so stupid. So that really bugged me as a Last Jedi fan in particular, going, well, we already knew this, and you're just trying to tell people again. Anyway,
it's my way. Yeah.
I saved it. Oh my gosh, dang it. This is so dumb. So the whole Luke thing really was disappointing to me. I really wanted him to be used better. Like, I thought we got past that. Honestly, as Star Wars fans, thought we got past the whole Luke thing. Now he's awesome again, and let's show his new arc. He didn't have an arc. He didn't have anything, which I kind of wanted him to have. So,
I going back to like the prequels, everyone said when The Last Jedi came out, they said, this movie, it just, like, The Last Jedi really did kind of beat into your head, like, anyone can be Force sensitive.
Yes.
Anyone can be a Jedi. You don't have to belong to this certain bloodline, which I actually hated that narrative because of how they beat you over the head with it. I think making the mention of it is good just to remind people that, like, go back to the prequels. There was thousands of Jedi Knights.
Right.
It just so happened to be that the chosen one happened to be a Skywalker, and because we narratively have to follow some characters throughout, we followed this one family. And so, like, I kind of wanted to be like, okay, let's just go back to the prequels. And remember, for thousands of years, there was Jedi Knights before Anakin. But then Last Jedi knocks us over the head with it over and over and over and over again. I'm like, okay, you've made your point. But then in this movie, they're like, oh, by the way, we're still going to focus on a Solo who's a son of a Skywalker and now a Palpatine. And we're going to go back to the bloodline type of idea that I think the current generation of films, I think, focused on too much in the Force Awakens. Yeah. So then they tried to go the complete opposite direction in The Last Jedi. And, like, I just found all of that to be very unsatisfying. But here's the last thing I want to talk about on really kind of the negatives that I had problems with narrative, because there are a few other, like, small kind of nitpick things.
Right.
When we get to the finale and we see the Emperor there, and he basically says that the whole idea, which is interesting because his first idea is that Rey is going to strike him down.
Yes.
And that his essence is going to leave his body, enter hers. She will become the new Empress. She's part of his bloodline, even though that shouldn't matter. She will become the new Sith Empress. Yep. That idea of, like, killing a Sith and their force, their essence going into someone else has been established in the extended universe. It's now Legends, and in some of the canon stuff, in some books and things, comics and whatnot. So, like, that I kind of was like, okay,
it didn't bug
this
me.
is gonna feel new to a lot of movie fan only people, but this okay, I'm kind of okay with. So that's the plan. Then Kylo shows back up, and then all of a sudden he's like, ooh, a dyad in the Force. Okay, we really haven't explored this whole idea or notion of what a dyad in the Force is.
Right.
We're now just hearing about it in Act 3 of the 9th movie in this whole series. And then he says, ooh, a dyad in the Force. And, like, he immediately knows, and he spouts some stuff off, and he says that, I can pull from both of you, and two will make one alive. Yeah. And so, like, he immediately, like, pivots off of, like, his master plan and ditches. But what I don't get was, they both raised their sabers like they were going to go in to kill him and get rid of him. But if they did that, then wouldn't his essence, like, left his body and gone to that? I'm like, none of this makes sense. No. Now he's abandoning his whole plot.
Yes.
And he's saying that he's got the power of all the Sith in him, which has not been established anywhere.
Right.
And that he has so much lightning force ability that he's able to knock down all of these ships. Yes. And I went, okay, I feel like all we're doing is we're amping up abilities just to try to give us false feelings of, like, high stakes here.
And right.
I
agree.
And so I was like, okay, that just has problems. But when Rey takes the two lightsabers and she's fighting back, and all of a sudden she's hearing all the voices, and she's like, all the Jedi live in me. I'm like, this is not established anywhere. And we've known from things that are established in the films, in order to come back as a Force ghost, this is something that has to be learned.
Right.
And it takes effort and requires effort.
Yes.
Luke did it, awfully darn fast.
Yes, very fast.
Very fast. Now, we don't know if maybe Obi-Wan, who learned this...
He was by himself for like 30 years on that island, maybe. 20 years, 10 years, whatever.
But all of a sudden, we're hearing all these other voices of all these others. So, like, we're hearing Qui-Gon Jinn. We're hearing Obi-Wan. We're hearing both versions of Anakin, by the way. Alec Guinness's voice and Hayden Christensen's voice. And we're hearing Mace Windu and all these others. There's also Ahsoka Tano was in there.
I read that also, gosh.
I mean,
Kanan.
Kanan Jarrus, yes. That all of them kind of had their voices.
Yeah.
Like, and all of a sudden, like, now we're talking like all the Sith can inhabit one Sith and all the Jedi can inhabit one Jedi.
Right.
And it's this huge, and I kind of went, none of that makes sense. We're just we're just making these
making it
false
up as we
sense
go.
of urgency and making it up. And I just kind of went like, it just didn't feel satisfying to me. There's nothing that's established that's going to happen. Timelines and some of this stuff wouldn't work out. It was kind of one of those things where I went, I rolled my eyes and I went, it is what it is. Like,
I agree. It was the ending to me, again, should have been more important to me than it was. I didn't feel anything. And when the Jedi started talking, I wanted to feel something, right? Here's what I think. And I hadn't thought about, how much effort it takes to be a Force ghost and whatnot. However, every single person that I've talked to about this movie says, what a missed opportunity at the end to not see the Jedi standing with her. Yeah. And I completely agree. I mean, if you're going to just let anybody
we had all those Sith
ghost,
people.
Why?
Whether they're acolytes or whether they're ghosts, we don't know, right?
Of course we don't, because JJ doesn't want to explain anything. But anyway, that was a huge opportunity that I feel like that may have been the moment where I would have felt it and gotten emotional if I saw Ewan McGregor, I saw Mace Windu, and I saw Yoda, and I saw Luke, and I saw Kanan, if possible. I mean, I get that it's not animated, but if I saw these Jedi standing behind her, and what a moment that could have been, I think. What a big moment. And I don't know who was in the meeting room and said, nah, let's not do that.
Right.
But you should lose your job, because that's the moment everyone I've talked to asked for. Everybody I've talked to said, wow, they really blew
And with
it.
So much other fan service in this film, why would you not done it there?
Why? The one that we all want.
Yeah.
I just was really frustrating. Okay. Just last things.
Yep.
Last things. General Hux's storyline about being a spy could have been cool, but it was stupid.
It was just ill-conceived. It could have been better.
It could have been better. The new droid for no reason, just to sell merchandise. That was frustrating.
I thought he was cute, though.
He was cute, but that's the point.
Missed opportunity.
He served to know. I mean, it was like, what? Tell me what he does. Like, why is he important? Then the fan service, we could go all day about that. No Jedi ghosts. Planet killing weapons again was one of the things that I said. Like, what's Palpatine's plan? Blow up the whole galaxy and rule nobody? I don't get it.
Yeah. If they don't come in line, boom, you're gone.
Yeah, and then I think the only other problem I had was the Knights of Ren. I feel like they just put them in the movie just because they needed to be in the movie.
Because fans wanted them.
Well, we didn't get... I think we wanted to know more about them. Not just that there's this elite force that likes Kylo Ren, but...
Here's the thing, Matt. I think we had so much that they were trying to cram into one film. They could have split these and made them into two films, taken their time and explored it a little bit more on some of this stuff. Yep. And I think narratively, we could have had a much better product.
I agree. It just was way too rushed, and they should have left a lot of it on the cutting room floor. The only other thing that I have that's a negative, we could talk about positives, off the top of my mind, was the Sith Wayfinder. Why couldn't that have just been a Sith holocron? Like, we know what that is.
I thought the same thing.
When I saw it, I went, ooh, a cool different interpretation of a holocron, I think, but it should have the twisting corners and it should have this, but that doesn't quite look right. And then like, a Sith Wayfinder. I'm like, that's stupid.
Right, yep.
Like, reward us who know what a holocron is, which is almost everybody now. They sell them at freaking Disneyland. Like, why not make it a holocron? Yep. But kudos to them for exploring the Sith Temple. Like, good job. Yep. At least we got a Sith Temple. So, I don't know.
Let's talk about some good things now, because we have a lot to nitpick on this, but let's talk about some good things. First off, I want to say right off the bat, the relationship between Rey, Finn, and Poe, I'm glad they put that more up front in this film than was done in The Last Jedi. I think that was a very good, positive thing that needed to happen.
I agree. I love those. You know what? The sequels made characters I like. I really like Finn, and I wish there was more. He's such a cool character. Yep. I love his arc throughout the film. This movie, there wasn't much of an arc. He just kind of was the same the whole time, which is important, I guess.
There were some things that were alluded to, though, with his character.
Yes, I agree with that.
So
that's one of my favorite parts about this.
And I know that JJ confirmed after the film that he was going to confess that he's force sensitive to Rey. But that's after the film, JJ. You should have had him say that crap in the film.
Yeah, everybody left going, what was
I know.
What was he going to say? I mean, it's not like a confession. It's just something cool that he could have shared with her that he didn't get an opportunity, or he probably will later. I don't know. But I do love, that's my second point, and the things I liked was specifically Poe and Finn together.
Yeah.
Because they're
the
such
bromance
a cool bromance.
There is good.
They're so great. I love their characters. I'm with you 100% on that.
Yep. I loved Babu Frick. I loved Zori. I wish we would have got more of that. I also, a quick negative, I don't like the fact that they tried to make like now retconning Poe's backstory that he was a spice smuggler and that he was a spice runner. Like that kind of like just felt like, well, you're just trying to make him a Han Solo type.
Right.
Like, okay. But I did like Babu Frick. I did like Zori as far as some new characters they did bring in. I thought that stuff was good.
I agree.
I'm trying to think.
Babu Frick is awesome.
He's super fun,
he was the best
super
part
cute.
of the movie for me when I walked out the first time because I was so negative the first time. I'll say it second time, I liked it more, everybody.
Yeah.
The first time I walked out, I went, at least I got Babu Frick. Like, he's awesome.
I loved the very, very, very quick cameo of John Williams in the film.
Oh, Johnny. Yeah.
After scoring all these films and literally contributing so much to this whole series and giving tone and characters and providing emotion. I like the fact that he actually got to be on screen for a quick, literally like 2 seconds.
Right. Yep, I like that. I liked, and I will continue to like, the character Kylo Ren. I really love Kylo Ren.
I really loved him in this movie.
I liked him in every movie, and I know people will complain about the whiny, complainy.
I liked him in The Force Awakens because he was just whiny bad guy, and they were playing it a certain way, and I went, okay, I'm okay with this. I did not care for him very much because the whole thing between him and Rey in that movie felt kind of forced and kind of weird in The Last Jedi. But the relationship between the two in this one, I actually felt was better because I feel like they did flesh that out a little bit more, especially with the scene where you go back on the piece of the Death Star, right in the ocean, where she's like, because earlier it's like, why didn't you take my hand? And she's like, I wanted to take you, like, following that conversation up, I wanted to take your hand, but I wanted to take Ben's hand. Right. The internal conflict, and then the moment when he decides to turn, and he's basically seen a memory, basically. He's seen his father, but it's all mental. It's all in his head. It's not a Force ghost. And he has that conversation, and he's like, Dad. And then Han Solo looks at him and says, I know. Call back to the line in Empire. Yep. He's in his head, so we know that really he's trying to say, Dad, I love you. Right. And he's saying, like, I know. Like, that actually was kind of a touching scene. Yep. It really helped the progression of that character. I really thought that they did Kylo Ren really good, even though the fact I don't like the way they ended with Rey. I would have liked to have seen actually Rey die off and Kylo kind of this different story and go off. I did like that at the end, he did have a redemption arc that happened, and he did give up his life for her. Right. Whether or not you like the kiss or you don't like the kiss, I don't really care either way. There was tension there. I could see the kiss happening. Was. I mean, it doesn't bug me.
Almost all the movies.
Right. It doesn't bug me.
No, me either.
I like that. I think the music was great. I think the visuals in this movie were amazing. I mean, as much as I think the miniaturized Death Star tech on them is stupid, the look of that entire fleet, the look of the Sith Temple, the look of Palpatine, visually, they got this movie right. There was a lot going on visually, and it was really frenetic, like you said, but it looked amazing. It really did.
I agree. The film looked awesome. There's so many cool little things, so many visual. It was beautiful. And just to kind of continue on, the Sith Temple, I don't like much about the Palpatine thing. Right. Like, I get frustrated story-wise. However, they made him really scary, which I liked. Yes. Like horror movie kind of scary. Like the flashing strobing lights, like from different angles on his face. Right. And the way his eyes looked and his hands, it was terrifying. And so I say A+ to the horror development team because they made me afraid of him. He was scary. Right. And that was one of the things I liked most was every time he was around, it got really dark and scary, which I loved. And let's see. Okay. Something else that I loved, and you mentioned this, was pretty much the whole Death Star scene. The water, the fight scene, her battling herself, like Luke. I mean, we've seen this a million times before, but
when she's climbing up the thing and she's kind of climbing around it, like that looks like the piece, very reminiscent of what Obi-Wan did when he was, deactivating the tractor beam.
I liked pretty much everything on the Death Star. So before the Death Star with Janna, stupid, the dagger lining up her, and all of that was like, that's stupid.
One MacGuffin to the next, to the next, to the next. I did say to someone, maybe it was you earlier, I said, a lot of this film felt like we were in an RPG game, and it was like, we're going to start off this quest, but we're going to have to keep going to the next place to get the next piece that'll finally lead us all the way back.
It was, so pretty much everything leading up to that, I hated. But the Death Star part, I was like, this is cool. We get to go back. We get to go to the throne room, and we remember all these things that happened there. We get the the Sith Wayfinder, so stupid. And I like that. The battle, the whole thing there, I loved. This is one of the things I have on my list, is I love that we got to see Harrison Ford again. I was shocked. Just because of his relationship with Star Wars.
And he said he was done after The Force Awakens. Yeah. They did go to him after Carrie died, and I think they said, like, hey, we're going to give you a truckload of money. We need you to come back because we have some story that we can't tell now that we want to.
Right. And I loved it. I loved that it was his dad. Because I'm a dude and my relationship with my father, you with yours, especially since he's passed, like it's important to feel those things.
I loved it. I mean, I really did. I loved that moment. It was a great moment.
I didn't care that I didn't think about the logistics at first, but I'm in a Force Ghost, obviously. Anyway, I was very appreciative of that moment. Loved it. Call back to The Force Awakens with, I know what I must do, but I don't have the strength to do it. And he touches his face like he did. I really appreciate that. It was really a great moment. One of the only times where I felt. Chewie, when he cried for Leia, I felt. Han Solo, when he showed up and had a conversation with Ben, I felt. And that was pretty much the only times I felt.
How about when they give Chewie the medal?
Okay. I thought it was cheesy. Like, how is she gonna know?
It's like, fan service. It's fan service, but I gotta admit, there was part of me that's like, hey, since the late 70s, we've been saying, what the crap?
Yeah,
Chewie was part of that, right? And he isn't there. He didn't get a medal. What the crap is going on? And there's the fact that they gave him basically, like, I think what was basically Han's medal. And like they show at the end of the movie, like he's holding it up and showing the other, pilots and stuff. And like that's fan service. It's a little thing.
Yeah.
Versus some of the bigger, more overt things, but it's a little thing that sometimes you put in, you kind of go, okay, that's fine. It
didn't bug me. When I saw it, I didn't go, Right. Now I'm like, a little cheesy, but I get it. There were way cheesier moments in this movie than that. Yes. That just didn't land at all. Final Death Star I liked. Han I liked. Here's what I also liked that was cheesy. Was Luke Skywalker raising his X-Wing from the water.
Yes.
I loved it.
Especially because they're playing the exact same motif from Empire that happens when he can't do it and then Yoda does it for him. It's cheesy. It's definitely a callback to that moment at Empire. But I loved it.
I liked it because it made sense for me narratively too.
Yes.
How is she going to get off the island? And Luke call back to Empire and to The Last Jedi when we saw it in the water. And I just really liked that moment. As cheesy as it might have been, that one worked.
That and when they say like, hey, there's an old call sign, it's Red 5.
Yeah. Oh.
And they're like, that's Luke's old ship. And then when Finn says, it's Rey, I was like, all that, like that whole like little dialogue, I was like, that's kind of cool because it would be coming through as an old signal because that thing would have been 30 some years old at that point.
Right.
I liked that. I liked
that. I liked the kiss. I'm just going to go on record. I liked the kiss. I felt that the tension has been there for the last at least 2 movies. So I expected the kiss, to be honest, when that moment came.
I expect the kiss. I could take it or leave it. It doesn't bug me. Right. I don't care for it. It's just whatever.
It doesn't make a difference because he dies and I don't care anymore. So whatever. Thanks, JJ. The other thing that I liked I don't know what they are. I don't know if it makes sense. But I like the scary chanting monks, minions, whatever they were.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were, but it created this really dark, scary moment for Rey as she's like in this massive arena with all of these like chanting monks? Question mark. I like the visual. I just don't know what they are, where they came from, how they are. I didn't know.
I did like also a lot of the little Easter eggs. So like the 42-year celebration. Well, it's 42 years since A New Hope. When we see all the ships show up, you look closely in the background, you can see the ghost.
Totally see the ghost. It's actually pretty relatively forward-ish.
Yeah, you see Hammerhead corvettes that had been established in in the prequels and stuff. Like you see some ships that you would recognize. The ship that Han Solo and Chewie were flying in The Force Awakens before they get the Millennium Falcon back shows up. So like I liked some of that kind of stuff as well. Some of the Easter eggs. I talked about the John Williams moment.
Right.
Even though I didn't like the whole like all the Jedi are together, the fact that Freddie Prinze Jr., who voices Kanan Jarrus, and what's her name, Elizabeth something, Ashley something, that does the voice of Ahsoka Tano and Qui-Gon and Hayden Christensen. Like the fact that they did that moment, like from a fan perspective, I like that they did that and got those people to come back and actually do that. I didn't like it narratively, storytelling wise, but
and again, if you're gonna do it, just do it. Just hey, here's some Jedi robes. Here's 5 minutes. I'm going to pay you $100,000. You're going.
But I will say, the way that they end it, where she goes back to Tatooine, and she basically buries the lightsabers, and the lady says, like, what's your name? And she says Rey, and she says Rey what? And she chooses Skywalker. I like the way they ended that. I like the fact that she's choosing who she wants to be. Her narrative arc is it doesn't matter who she was and where she came from. It's who she chooses to be. I did love that whole narrative arc with her character. And I did like the fact that she buries Luke and Leia's sabers and just kind of like puts them away, basically. Like she can get them back out if she wants them. She knows where they are. But she buries them to basically say like, it's a visual representation of we're putting aside the old and we're done with this. Now we're moving on, and she's got her own saber, and it's a yellow color,
cool
which is kind of from her staff, parts from her staff, but the yellow color represents that she's kind of a balance between learning and, fighting, and which is kind of makes sense for her character. Mm-hmm. I liked those kind of things. I even liked the little Force ghost, Luke and Leia at the end. The problem is, I kind of like it. But the problem is that once again, this movie to me felt like a lot of a rehash of Return of the Jedi. So at the end, we get Force Ghost showing up right before we get the end credits, and so many things that did kind of happen. I went, it's okay, but like, why wouldn't you have brought back not just Luke and Leia?
That's the problem. This is the end of not just the sequels in the original trilogy. This is the end of the freaking saga. I don't understand.
Okay, if Ben Solo though would have shown up as a Force Ghost,
that'd have been cool.
Would it, or would it be another thing like, what the crap?
No.
Yeah.
No. That wouldn't have worked.
Yes, it would not have worked.
No, that would not have worked. I thought you said Ben Kenobi, and I was like, no, that. So
yes.
There's moments, and I know she doesn't know him, but who cares? I do.
Right.
I don't care.
That definitely would be fan service, though, for sure.
Well, that the whole ending scene to me,
it's
was ridiculous.
Yeah,
and I'm not like super mad about it, but when I think about it logistically, I go, okay, so you're going back to a place that Luke hated. Which, whatever. I get why you're going back here, JJ, because you want to evoke the same feelings. You ended the prequels this way. You started the sequels, and I get it. Or you started the original trilogy. I get it. Right. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, she's like, I'm going to go to Tatooine. Princess Leia, there is no connection to Tatooine at all. That to me just was so cheesy. It didn't make any sense.
And Tatooine and Jakku are pretty much the same. So for Rey, it's kind of like, okay.
So for me, narratively, I was like, this is dumb. I get why you're here, and I'm feeling something as you're going through like the house and the settlement. I felt it, right? I was hoping to see some like moldy blue milk. Didn't see that. Doggone it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I get why people liked it. My mom, she's like, "Oh, it's my childhood." I'm like, "Okay, I get it." But Star Wars, it was cheesy. Didn't make sense. Forced.
Yeah.
Who are you? I mean, I'm okay with that line. I just thought, okay, this is cheesy. Here's Luke and Leia. I'm like, okay, I guess. But where's everyone else? This doesn't feel like closure for me as a fan of all of Star Wars. I don't know. I was like, I'll to be honest, I didn't feel anything at that moment. I just didn't feel anything. I felt it was cheesy.
Yeah.
And not in the good way or rewarding way for me. It just was like, darn. And then there's some fan servicey stuff we see. Somehow we see Cloud City involved in when all of these Star Destroyers go down.
We see the Ewoks. Yeah.
I'm going, if you're going to show this, show me, and I'll harp on this because I think Coruscant is such a cool place. Why not show me Coruscant?
It's the heart of the galaxy.
I don't get it. It's like, it was dumb. It was frustrating, and darn it, I just wanted this movie to be better.
So let's wrap this up.
Okay.
Because the question of the week I think is going to be super easy to ask the Super Friends, but Matt, if you had to rate this movie, you had to grade it.
Yeah.
Where do you grade this film?
Out of 10?
Out of 10, the schoolyard scale. I pick a scale. Gosh. I don't care. I'll stick with
schoolyard scale's way too hard. I'm going to stick with what I initially said, I think, which is a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
On like a real thing, like 5 being a mediocre movie.
So a 6 out of 10 on like a schoolyard scale, that's like a D.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many problems with it for me to feel really comfortable giving it a higher rating.
If I'm giving it a schoolyard rating, I'm going to give it a C-.
Yeah.
It's just a little below average. If C is average, it's a little below average because for me, it was just too many missed opportunities. I think this had the potential of being an A, being a solid A.
Maybe the best ever.
But yeah, potentially. But it was just like, I just kind of kept feeling like you could have done, you went left, and if you would have went right, it would have been more impactful to the story. Over and over and over again, I kept feeling that. You should have killed off some more people. You should have had some more impactful deaths. There should have been real stakes involved. Yes. But to me, at the end of the day, it just felt like we retread a lot of Return of the Jedi, and we didn't do it very well. And there was a lot of missed opportunities and stuff that just made no sense narratively. And I went, it's a fun enough movie if you don't look at it as the final movie in a Star Wars franchise and tying everything up.
Yep. Agreed.
Then it would be a fine movie. But the problem is, it is the final movie in the Star Wars franchise, and it's supposed to tie things up. And it could have been so much more.
Yep. It's kind of a hot mess. That's the word I use to describe to my friends. I'm like, yeah, it's a hot mess, guys. It's a mess. So I'm gonna the question of the week is easy. It's gonna be for the Super Friends. Super Friends, how do you rate this movie? And give us your reasons why. Give us your feelings. We've given you a lot of stuff that we've talked about. I fully anticipate that not everyone's gonna agree with us, and that's okay. Yeah, for sure.
That's totally okay because these are just our opinions and how it hits us. It's gonna hit everyone different. We get that. But Matt, I want to go one other question. For you. Rank the trilogies, first, second, and third. One being the best, third being the worst.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going all the movies. I had 11 rankings out.
Oh, well, I mean, we could do the movies, but rank the trilogies.
Oh, okay. Oh, gosh. I wasn't prepared for this. You go first this time.
Well, I'm not even prepared for this. This just came to me. But
well, it's obvious the first.
The top trilogy for me is going to be the original trilogy.
Yeah.
I think by far it's written the best. It's done.
Yeah, I got it.
The absolute best.
Yep.
Then it becomes, okay, who's second? And here's the thing. This is going to be a real hot take. The prequels for me take second place. Even though Attack of the Clones has got to be some of the worst freaking writing.
Yeah.
The narrative and the story on all three of those movies, because we're ranking a trilogy here.
Yeah.
The story and the narrative is very cohesive. We have to do certain things to get to certain places to make things in the original trilogy work, which they do. I don't maybe necessarily always agree with how they got there, or it seemed a little clunky, but they understood like, hey, I have to hit certain milestones and marks in order to make this work. And they did that. And that's why I have to put the sequel trilogy behind that, because overall, the narrative arc of this trilogy is the weakest. And they have some narrative things that they probably needed to hit or continue off of, and they did not. And that there was just a lot of missed opportunities. I mean, the whole Palpatine, Rey's a Palpatine reveal, that's Luke, I am your father all over again. And it's just copying things from before. So, original trilogy, then prequels, then sequels, which coincidentally enough happens to be the way that these trilogies were actually released.
That's interesting. Before this movie had come out, I would have gone original trilogy, sequels, prequels.
I think I would have too.
Now, having watched all the movies again, I completely agree with you with your hot take. Your hot take for me is also right. I hate that we agree on everything on this one, but I agree. The original trilogy is beautiful. I mean, there are still things in that. And when I went through and watched it again, I went, okay, this is a little slower than I remember, or this is pretty rough. And trying to see it through my current eyes and going, well, in the original or in the sequels, this is way cooler. So there's some things where, but narratively and storytelling, it's the best for me. And then it is the prequels. When I watch those movies back to back to back, and knowing the arc of the original trilogy and seeing the slow burn of Palpatine and the way that he pulls the strings, the manipulation, it is awesome.
It's a great story.
It's so good. And I get, basically it's a movie about a tyrannic leader coming to power and taking over the Senate. How interesting can that be? Apparently pretty interesting. It's very cool to watch. And then it's the sequels, and it's because this last movie could not pull it together, and it tried to do weird things that just, for me, did not work. It did not land. It should have been better for me. It just should have been better. And that's saying something, because all y'all listeners know The Last Jedi is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's a sequel trilogy. And I really like The Force Awakens as a movie as well. But when you add the three together with The Rise of Skywalker, it kind of sucks narratively. And to me, it kind of pisses on the original trilogy and the prequels a little bit. It makes it so those stories almost don't matter. The Chosen One prophecy, apparently that's a lie. And the prequels don't really count at all now. It's like, Balance of the Force. Thanks, Rise of Skywalker? What?
Yep.
So because of that, it dropped way down.
All right, so just to recap, you're giving Rise of Skywalker a D. I'm going to give it a C-. You and I aren't very far off. And when we do rate the original, all the trilogies, original, then prequel, then sequel, which honestly, before Rise of Skywalker, a week ago, I probably would have said it's original, then it's going to be sequel, then it's going to be prequel. Oh, how things line up between you and I this week is crazy, because I honestly thought you and I were going to be completely different on this in so many different ways.
I know.
So, Super Friends, we want to hear from you. What did you think of Rise of Skywalker? Where do you give it a rating? Give us a schoolhouse grading. Let us know your thoughts on this. We will read those next week, and we're prepared to buckle up, because I'm sure we're going to get some
hot takes. We're wrong.
Some hot takes or responses. And you know what? I'm okay with that.
That's great. Absolutely.
I love conversations. I've talked, like I said, Matt and I have done this. I've talked The Last Jedi to death with people that I disagree with on big points in The Last Jedi. Yeah. But it's cool. It's my opinion, and that's what it is. It's just my opinion.
Yep.
And so we want to hear your opinions, and we will talk about those next week. You can get us all the normal places. So if you want, you can send us an email, which is forwardofnerd@gmail.com. You can get us on Twitter or @forwardofnerd. We're on Instagram, forwardofnerd. We are on Facebook, facebook.com/ForToNerd, or you can call in 801-477-7687 and leave us a voicemail. Just so you know, though, you can't leave a voicemail over 3 minutes. It will cut you off. And I'm not going to be playing a 15-minute voicemail. I'm not going to stitch them together. So I'm just saying, if you do leave us a voicemail, you got 3 minutes. Keep it concise. Go. So, Matt.
Yeah.
This was a big one.
This was a big one.
Next week, we're going to be rolling in with our year-in review episode, which will drop right after the end of the year. So we're going to cap off 2019 and then start looking ahead to 2020. We got a lot of good stuff coming up.
New stuff.
Yep. We got a lot of new stuff coming up, apparently, too. All right. Well, from all of us here at the Fortress of Nerditude to all of you out there, wherever you may be, may the Force be with you always.